Chapter 1. Louis, get out of my house right now. Tony looked at Louis, who was knocking Erlang's leg, and really wanted to splash the hot milk in his hand. Good morning, Tony, don't be like this. As a half-brother, Stark Industries, I also have half the ownership. Louis said with a smile, then pushed the newspaper in front of Tony. The above is Tony Stark Tidbits. As the headline figure who feeds countless tabloids in New York, Tony has his own unique ability in making gossip. For example, last night, Tony and 3 models spent the Spring Festival together. Really, there is such a good thing, why don't you take me? Louis laughed. If you are willing to give up Stark Industries, I can make you 3 women every day without repetition. Tony said with a cold face. Louis stood up and stretched. As Tony Stark's half-brother, Louis inherited the genes of the Stark family excellent, with handsome curly hair in dark red, making him look like a playboy. The charm of free release is no less than Tony's. Also an alumnus of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Louis is several generations younger than Tony. It was only after Louis traveled to this world that he discovered that this was actually the Marvel world. A world invaded twice in 3 days. The point is, he is still Tony's younger brother whom he has never met, and both of them coincidentally go to MIT. However, Tony is studying in the undergraduate department of the Department of Electronic Engineering. Louis studied at the University Department of Economics and Sociology. Both of them graduated with the highest marks ever, and both of them are the pride of heaven. Definitely, the 2 of them are surrounded by flowers in the university. Facing Tony's cynicism, Louis shrugged his shoulders, and said with some complaints, "Do you think that with the blood of the Stark family, 3 women a day are enough?" Tony didn't bother to pay attention to Louis's nonsense. Every time he quarreled with Louis, he was the one who lost. And I am not in the state today. I had so much fun with the 3 models yesterday, I felt a little dizzy when I woke up in the morning. J.A.R.V.I.S, adjust the water temperature, I need to take a shower to wake up. Tony yelled. Okay, sir. J.A.R.V.I.S finally spoke, when Tony and Louis satirized each other before, J.A.R.V.I.S didn't speak. He didn't dare to say that the cup of hot coffee in Tony's hand was prepared by Louis. J.A.R.V.I.S, bring me a cup of coffee and help me add some whiskey. Louis also shouted. Tony gave Louis an angry look, he was getting a headache from the sound of whiskey now. Louis obviously did it on purpose. J.A.R.V.I.S looked at Tony, not knowing what to do. Tony shook his head, shaking off the dizziness, and said helplessly, "Do as he says, and sooner or later he will be poisoned to death with alcohol." Louis made a triumphant gesture after Tony left. Tony is a tsundere guy, he obviously cares about himself, but he always puts on a fierce look. Who doesn't know, Tony is a funny comparison. I always say that I want to drive myself out of the house, nothing more than wanting to be independent. As for the shares of Stark Industries, Louis has already received 1%. Tony is not the kind of person to hold on and not pay back, but Tony also needs to ensure that he has absolute control over the shares of Stark Industries. Louis could understand Tony's thoughts very well. J.A.R.V.I.S quickly brought a cup of alcoholic coffee to Louis. Thanks, J.A.R.V.I.S, it tastes good. Louis picked up the coffee, took a sip in satisfaction, and praised the craftsmanship of J.A.R.V.I.S. You're welcome, Mr. Louis, said J.A.R.V.I.S. Look at Tony in the newspaper, in the tidbits. Louis knew that the timeline for Iron Man's appearance was not yet reached. But it's definitely not far away. Soon enough, the Marvel Universe will see one invasion after another. If he didn't make enough preparations before that, even if he was Tony's younger brother, he might fall. Louis didn't dare to bet that he would be half of the people who survived the snap of his fingers. As a traverser, Louis had a Kamen Rider system in his mind. A system that allows hosts to create Kamen Rider belts. It's just that this system cannot succeed without the help of Tony, or Stark Industries. Louis was in college when he first got the system. But seeing the materials for making Kamen Riders, Louis felt that working hard all his life would not be as easy as working hard in Stark Industries and waiting to die. Therefore, the shares of Stark Industries, Louis is going to decide. Definitely, the primary goal is to solve the shareholders of Stark Industries. The Obadiah who created the Iron Overlord was the first to solve the target. However, because of the uncertain timeline, Louis' time is very tight, and he doesn't know when the time will start, so he must make plans early. Louis already has several records of Kamen Riders that can be manufactured at present, and he can only decide which one he wants to make after seeing the materials in Tony's laboratory. Louis also wanted to have the Emperor with his left hand and the Emperor with his right. But there are no materials, no technology, and some special abilities cannot be artificially given. For the time being, we can only finalize some simple Kamen Riders for self-defense. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 2. Tony walked out of the bathroom wiping his wet hair, only to notice that Louis, who was sitting on the sofa, had left. The milk on the tea table had obviously been heated. J.A.R.V.I.S. Has Louis been to my lab again? While wiping his wet hair, Tony finished the hot milk in one gulp and asked. Yes, sir, Mr. Louis seems to be very interested in industrial products. Now I'm more and more sure that he has the blood of the Stark family. Come with me and see what my brother has come up with. J.A.R.V.I.S. didn't say anything, so it was the default. Tony forbids Louis permission to everything in the house, except for particularly private things. Nothing else prevented Louis from getting in and out, including this laboratory that Tony regards as a treasure. The materials and weapons inside are worth hundreds or tens of millions of dollars outside. But it's everywhere in Tony's lab. Click. The door of the laboratory was opened. The messy scene in the lab almost made Tony go berserk. There are large and small parts all over the floor, which looks like they have been dismembered inhumanely. Louis, get out of here. Tony's mood, which was not bad at all, immediately darkened. Wait a minute, don't touch the outside parts, the temperature is a bit high. Louis's voice came from inside a black curtain, and it didn't take long for Louis to come out with an exploding head on his head. I need an explanation. Tony pressed on, trying to figure out what was going on. Messing up his lab. I can explain it. Originally, I wanted to experiment with my results, but as you have seen, there was a little accident. Louis pointed to the parts on the ground, feeling a little helpless. J.A.R.V.I.S. Help me dispose of it, don't throw it away, I can reuse it. Louis yelled, jumping himself to Tony's side. There is really no way. When I was dealing with the energy circulation device, something went wrong. The energy tube exploded, but I'm fine. I know you care about me, but I'm really fine and don't need to go to the hospital. Would you like to sponsor my new invention? That would be awesome, I love you, my brother Tony. Shut up for me. Tony was interrupted several times by Louis, and was so angry that he almost passed out. J.A.R.V.I.S. Prepare a quick-acting heart relief pill, Tony doesn't look too good. Louis laughed. Tony couldn't stand Louis's ridicule anymore, he rushed forward and wanted to beat Louis up. But Louis made a very simple push and caught Tony with a backhand. It's just a back fall. Tony was thrown violently. Louis held up his hands, looking innocent. I'm acting in self-defense, see, J.A.R.V.I.S. I'm acting in self-defense. Hiss. Ah. Tony, who was thrown to the ground, immediately yelled, grinning in pain. Louis remembered his previous reminder this time, and immediately rushed to help Tony up. But Tony's back had 2 blood blisters from the hot parts. J.A.R.V.I.S. prepares the scald medicine. Louis said hastily. He helped Tony to the living room. Tony's clothes were already tattered and he couldn't wear them. On the back are the blood bubbles scalded by the hot parts, which looks very scary. After a lot of effort, Tony finally came to his senses, his face throbbing with pain. Tony, I can really explain. Louis felt that he still had a chance to save himself. Although he and Tony have been teasing each other, but he really didn't mean to hurt Tony. This was totally an accident. Tony looked at Louis indifferently with an expression of old god, waiting for his explanation. Well, I took a part-time fighting course in college, and it was military fighting. Tony didn't change his face, it wasn't the question he wanted to know. I shouldn't be using your lab for dangerous tests. Tony shook his head, that wasn't the answer either. The news that you spent the spring festival with 3 models, I disclosed it to the newspaper in advance, just to earn some pocket money. A mouthful of blood welled up in Tony's heart, but he still forced himself to calm down. That was not what he wanted to know. Louis was silent, as if he had nothing to hide from Tony. Tony even opened the laboratory to himself, and he had no secrets to hide. It's really gone, I've said everything I need to say. Louis really couldn't think of any other secrets he had. Things like traversers can't be said, they can't be said, even if they are killed. Tony sighed, and said, what are you going to build? Those parts look like a robot. Call. Louis breathed a sigh of relief. He thought Tony wanted to know something and scared himself to death. However, it should be said, worthy of Tony. Stark. For these technologies, a general idea can be imagined only from the parts. Now that Tony asked, and Louis didn't intend to hide it, it might be possible to promote the early release of Iron Man Mark I. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 3. This is a body armor. I make it a Kamen Rider. Wearing it, I can have stronger power. Somewhat excitedly, Louis started giving Tony his own Kamen Rider. Well, although this is just an idea. Moreover, the results of the experiment were somewhat unsatisfactory. I have to admit that I had a problem with the setting of the energy tube. The energy guide layer fluctuated, causing the energy tube to break. I need to follow up on the material of the energy tube, or artificially change the energy diversion layer. Louis patiently explained his thoughts, and it was impossible to manufacture things completely according to the systematic plan. The system just gave an idea. The specifics still need to be operated by Louis himself. Tony thought for a moment. Although what Louis said was a bit messy, he still understood the general idea. Sounds interesting, let me put it together and see. Tony couldn't care less about the pain in his back. The special burn potion worked really well, and it also had a slight paralyzing effect. Tony wanted to see the Kamen Rider Louis was talking about right now, the finished one. It is not troublesome to assemble. Louis set up the assembly program and easily completed the assembly within 10 minutes. A pair of blue and silver interlaced armor appeared in front of Tony with an epic-making beauty. This is Kamen Rider G3. Among the Kamen Rider Agito, the Kamen Rider made for Gulanji. But Louis changed it. There is no Gulanji in this world, but there are other species that invaded the Earth. It was these enemies that Louis had to face. However, in terms of setting, G3 still faces enemies mainly human beings. The tempered coating used on the surface of the armor can deal with the damage of thermal weapons, and Louis has also modified the weapon system. In fact, it is simplification, using the existing weapons of Stark Industries on the G3. The visual area uses compound eyes. What do you think about it? Tony noticed G3's red compound eyes and was a little puzzled. This is not a simple viewing area. I have also added information processing function, video call function, and VR movie and game area. It is both leisure and entertainment. I am really a genius. Louis triumphantly introduced his magic reform. After all, it is the blood of the Stark family, and everything is based on entertainment and comfort. Let me try it on. After listening to Tony, he also wanted to try it on himself. I don't know why, but I have a sense of expectation, and I always feel that it coincides with a certain idea in my mind. Mark 1. Hey, Tony, you **ing green laborer, your first time wasn't for me. Louis smiled, he knew it was destined. Tony is definitely interested in this kind of armor-like armament. Louis quickly established an energy diversion and reduced the energy supply to ensure safety. Louis didn't want any problems with his cheap brother. Although Tony is dead, he is the only legal heir. Well, thinking about it, it seems very interesting. Do you want to give it a try? Louis squinted his eyes and looked at Tony in G3, but Tony's completely defenseless appearance made Louis finally give up this idea. Well, I am really not suitable to be a villain. Okay, you don't need to wear the headgear, Tony, you can try to walk. Louis loosened the fixers around G3. The entire armor fell to the ground completely. But Tony didn't feel the weight at all, as real as wearing clothes. The only downside is that the waist is a bit tight. How did you do that? Tony looked at Louis in disbelief. This armor looks bulky, but it doesn't feel bulky to wear, and there is no problem in moving it. I added a cushioning device, and the lining uses a special non-Newtonian fluid to fit the body and reduce pressure. Louis carefully looked at Tony wearing G3. Suddenly, as if he had discovered a new continent, he shouted in surprise. Look, what did I find? Tony, you actually have a small belly, what did I say? Eating hamburgers all the time is not good, and you're not exercising, I mean outside of the bed. The bathroom, kitchen, and living room are not counted. I mean the outdoors. Oh, I hope you don't have a special hobby for the outdoors. Louis's mouth was so broken that people wanted to tear him apart. He took out his phone and pointed it at Tony's protruding belly. This is Tony's black history. Although Tony has a lot of dark history, but what should be preserved still needs to be preserved. Can't slack off, it's a good thing to threaten Tony in the future. Damn, what are you doing? Delete the photo for me, hurry up. Tony wanted to rush over and grab the photo. But Louis cut off the energy supply in an instant, and the G3 armor pressed on Tony's body like a heavy stone. I forgot to mention that the armor is supported by energy, not your own strength. Louis smiled, and the photo of Tony's belly on the phone swayed in front of Tony. Damn it, you should have a waist adjustment function, Tony cursed. I originally made the armor for myself. You insist on wearing it. Blame me. Louis put away his mobile phone, with a proud look of your black history is in my hands. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 4. After confirming that he could not escape this black history, Tony also gave up resistance. Lie on the ground, waiting for Louis to untie the armor for himself. As the mechanical power arm slowly disassembled the G3, Tony finally breathed a sigh of relief. Together with the energy transfer layer, the comfort of the G3 is unmatched. But once the energy was cut off, Tony felt like he was almost crushed to death. Well, the feeling of freedom is awesome. Tony joked with interest. Louis reached out and pulled Tony up. The energy diversion layer is still a threshold that cannot be bypassed. Louis shook his head. Without suitable materials, the energy supply can only be reduced, or the combination of the diversion layer can be changed. Louis didn't even think that G3 had energy problems from the very beginning. Originally in the Marvel world, there was a better choice, and that was Tony's small nuclear reactor. But this thing hasn't appeared yet. Relying on the little things seen in the movie, it is really difficult for Louis to reproduce. Louis kind of expected Tony to be kidnapped soon. Only if Tony is kidnapped will the small nuclear power reactor I need appear. Hearing Louis' question, Tony also pondered. This is really a problem. If you want to drive such an armor to fight, the energy consumption will be very high. Even with the energy diversion device designed by Louis, the battle time is probably only more than 10 minutes. I need to think about this problem carefully. You can send me the design parameters and ideas of the energy diversion layer. Tony felt that he had to be more serious and let Louis see what it meant to be your brother will always be your brother. Louis sighed helplessly, he thought it would be more realistic to let Tony be kidnapped quickly. Louis really misses small nuclear reactors. Then after thinking about it, I spoke my mind. Tony, when will you be kidnapped? Tony looked at Louis with a dark face, he absolutely believed that Louis really wanted to be kidnapped. I was kidnapped, so you can inherit the Stark industry. Tony snorted coldly. Definitely not, you have been kidnapped, I can rescue you, let you be grateful to me, and give me the Stark industry with your own hands. Louis's mind turned quickly, and he quickly found a step for himself. Tony's face softened slightly, at least Louis' answer proved that he had no malice towards him. But you reminded me. As the chairman of Stark Industries, my life is indeed in danger. Your suit of armor gave me an idea. I need to design a suit of armor to protect my own safety. Tony felt that his idea needed to be realized quickly. He was really afraid that Louis would direct an act in a kidnapping case, and then wear G3 to save himself. That would be too embarrassing. A dignified Tony Stark would never be grateful for such a plot. Louis wants to cry but has no tears. Don't, please hurry up and be your playboy. Get kidnapped now. My small nuclear reactor can't just collapse in the middle like this, and die prematurely. But seeing Tony's expression, I'm afraid Tony is really thinking about this matter seriously. Master, the military's phone number. J.A.R.V.I.S., who hadn't made a sound for a long time, suddenly spoke, and connected a phone call. On. Tony reapplied the burnt ointment on his back. Soon there was a voice on the other end of the phone. Tony, long time no see. Long time no see, who are you? This joke is not funny at all. Didn't you agree to leave today? Where are you? Leaving today? What's the matter? Tony felt as if he had forgotten something very important. J.A.R.V.I.S., is there anything I should do today? Master, today is the time you and the military agreed to test new inventions. Oh, yes, I almost forgot. Tony said lazily and harshly. Thank God for giving you a little sanity, it seems that you were overstimulated by the 3 models yesterday. Tony's face darkened. If you don't mention the model thing, we can still have a good chat. Okay, we are all waiting for you, come over as soon as possible. Okay, I'll try my best. Tony hung up the phone. J.A.R.V.I.S, I think I need to take another shower. Tony took his time. J.A.R.V.I.S has no opinion. When Tony talked on the phone, he didn't shy away from Louis at all. This also let Louis hear the key thing, to experiment with new inventions? Isn't this the beginning plot of Iron Man 1? Nope. I just said that I hope Tony will be kidnapped soon, it won't happen so soon. Is it too late for me to make a wish for a leather case that seals the Demon Emperor? Although Tony has a bad personality, he is also cynical. But I still have confidence in my new invention. With a little tidying up, Tony was ready to go. Louis, do you want to go with me? I'll take you to see your brother and my new invention. Tony still didn't forget to snort at this time. No, pay attention to your own safety. Louis refused mercilessly, and reminded Tony a little. He didn't want to be kidnapped with Tony. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 5. Louis couldn't guarantee that he'd be as lucky as Tony. It's really hard for common people to live in the Marvel world. Louis refused himself, and Tony didn't force it. When he left, he warned, Louis, don't do anything dangerous in my laboratory. Otherwise, I'll be kicked out. Louis went on imitating Tony's tone. In this case, Tony didn't know how many times he repeated it during this time. But Louis is stubborn. As long as you know. Tony changed into a suit. Okay, let's go quickly, I really hope you will be kidnapped soon, and then don't beg me to save you crying bitterly. Louis rolled his eyes. This hard-spoken and soft-hearted brother Tony still hasn't experienced the beatings of society. Boom. The moment the door was closed, Louis changed his countenance. The look of fooling around is gone. J.A.R.V.I.S, activate the locator on Tony for me. Mr. Louis, is it not good to do this? J.A.R.V.I.S, I'm just concerned for Tony's safety. Okay, but I still feel that there is a problem with this. The addresses of Tony and the 3 models are exposed by you. Those are not important. This time, Tony may really be in danger. Louis said coldly, the locator has been connected to the computer. The little red dot representing Tony's location started from home, crossed Green Avenue, and is now heading towards Queen Street. The final destination is still a military base in the outskirts, and they are going to the desert of Afghanistan for weapons testing. J.A.R.V.I.S, you continue to be in charge of monitoring, and I will adjust G3. Louis ordered. If you want to save Tony, you still have to rely on Kamen Rider G3. The previous experimental data is not very ideal. Because Louis wanted to strengthen the basic performance of G3, the energy diversion tube exploded as a result. In fact, I want to achieve the performance of G3 in the original drama. Louis' production has fully met the standard, and even faintly exceeded it. It turned out that Louis really wanted to build the performance of the G3X, or even the G4. That's going too far. However, in any case, the normal model of the G3 is out. Louis adjusted the energy drive again, and Kamen Rider G3 was officially released. Looking at the body armor of Kamen Rider G3, Louis nodded in satisfaction. Now, it can be regarded as barely having the self-protection ability. The weapon system of G3 is more than enough to face some common people. Louis is going to continue to strengthen the G3 defensive ability, survival is the victory. J.A.R.V.I.S, which detected Tony's movements, suddenly rang. Mr. Louis, there seems to be something wrong. J.A.R.V.I.S zoomed in on the computer's positioning map, and Tony's position shifted greatly. It was originally located in the desert of Afghanistan, but just now Tony's vital signs decreased rapidly, and the location is moving rapidly. Louis' eyes turned cold. What should happen is still going to happen. It's a bit immoral for Tony to get hurt a little bit, but for the sake of small nuclear power reactors, it's something that has to go through. J.A.R.V.I.S, you have entered the G3 system, and you can help me detect Tony's location anytime, anywhere, and let's save Tony. Yes, Mr. Louis. A supercar with a silver streamer drove out from the villa by the sea. This is Tony's car. In line with Tony's is my principal. Louis took it unceremoniously. As a Kamen Rider, how can you not have a car? The motorcycle is too dirt, but the car is handsome. J.A.R.V.I.S is constantly checking Tony's vitals and location. Mr. Lewis, Master's vital signs are getting weaker and weaker. Lewis ignored it, and he was also worried that the movement of the world would change the original plot because of his arrival. The speed of the car reached the limit. Ignoring the prescribed driving speed. The police have dispatched a number of police cars to pursue. But he didn't even see Silver Lightning's butt. In a dark and dry cave. Tony felt a sharp pain in his chest, so tearing that he almost cried out. At the end of his memory, he only remembered the sound of huge amounts of explosion. Then he fell into a coma. Accidental attack? Or 4? Tony couldn't help but think of Lewis' words. Could it be that Lewis really wanted to kidnap himself? Achoo! Louis, who flew to rescue Tony, sneezed. J.A.R.V.I.S, you know what, this is definitely Tony yelling at me, he must think I kidnapped him. J.A.R.V.I.S, anyone would think you kidnapped Tony. After all, the possibility of Tony being kidnapped was mentioned not long ago. It was too much of a coincidence. Lewis frowned. On the computer in front of him, the value of Tony's vital signs was still not stable. But no longer in a coma. Lewis breathed a sigh of relief, thank God, it's good that he didn't die. In a dark cave. The dry air almost swept over Tony's lungs, and it hurt to move even a little. Tony looked at the strange contraption on his chest, batteries, wires, magnets, forming a return loop. It's such a bad, ugly design, and Tony wants to get it off of him. If I were you, I wouldn't do this. In the darkness, a strange man with half-bald hair came over and said softly. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 6. The top of the strange man's head looked like a half-peeled boiled egg. Tony ruffled his hair, thinking it was a little too much. It must be that I have been with Lewis for too long recently, and everyone wants to go up and make fun of it. Where is this place? This doesn't look like a beach in Hawaii, or a prairie in California, Tony asked. The strange man didn't expect that Tony would still be in the mood to joke at such a time. Mr. Tony Stark, just kidding at this time, at least it proves that you are still alive, doesn't it? The bald-haired man came over and showed Tony the shrapnel in his hand. See this? Inside your body, there are at least a dozen shrapnel. The conditions here are poor, and I'm not a surgeon, so I can only take out part of it. Tony's face changed slightly, he understood his situation a bit. It's an electromagnet scrapped from a scrap car, used for adsorbent shrapnel. You can understand it this way, this is your life. Tony's hand stopped abruptly, just now he was still thinking about how to make this device look better. Who are you? Where is this place? Tony regained his composure. He needs to know where he is now. And find ways to save yourself. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ethan, a professor of physics at the University of Pennsylvania. Like you, I am also a hostage here. Ethan was introducing himself, and from time to time he leaned into the crack of the door to observe the movement outside. The rustling sound of rubber boots rubbing against the ground makes one's scalp tingle. Ethan quickly came to Tony's side and helped Tony up. Hey, what are you doing? I'm still a patient, Tony grumbled. Stand up, put your hands up, like me. Ethan positioned Tony like a puppet. Tony was reluctant, but without knowing the situation he could just do it. Creak. The noise from the old iron door can almost penetrate the eardrums. A group of terrorists wearing assault jackets took this weapon and walked in. The Stark Industries logo is engraved on the weapon. Weapons from Stark Industries? Tony's mind was spinning rapidly. The supply of these weapons was recorded every time. How did it end up in the hands of these terrorists? More importantly, these guns are all new, and there is no such thing as eliminating alternatives. The terrorist who walked in looked at Tony with satisfaction. I thought I'd caught a dead man back, but he's still alive. The leading terrorist speaks an incomprehensible language. Hey, slow down, I can't understand what you're saying. Tony complained, with a few family greetings mixed in. This is a word that is understood almost all over the world, and it immediately made the terrorists restless. Swish swish swish. 7 guns. The black muzzle of the gun was aimed at Tony's heart. I'm sorry, he just can't understand what you're saying, I'll be the interpreter, everyone calm down, calm down, calm down. Ethan immediately stopped in front of Tony, using the same language to communicate. The leading terrorist waved his hand, and the younger brother behind him immediately put down all his guns. Both sides have a word for each other. Tony quickly understood what the group wanted. It turned out that they kidnapped themselves and wanted to make weapons for them by themselves. Yes or no? The terrorist looked at Tony with a cruel smile on his lips. Tony's life is in his own hands, if he dares not agree, let this noble son know what cruelty is. Ethan tugged on Tony's clothes and whispered a prayer, yes, yes, yes. Amid Ethan's prayers, Tony forced a smile and coughed a few times. He tooey. Spit on the terrorist leader's feet. Tony always thought that Louis's gesture was vulgar, but now that he did it himself, he still. It's so cool. The terrorist's face instantly collapsed, and he turned and walked away. When leaving the cave, he ordered, don't let him die. Immediately afterwards, countless terrorists who grew up in iron and blood carried out inhumane violence against Tony. Ethan could only watch from the sidelines, and shouted loudly, don't touch that thing on the chest, he will die. In the end, Ethan threw himself on Tony, trying to help Tony take part of the damage. On a private jet, Louis and J.A.R.V.I.S just watched Tony's vitals drop constantly. Damn, how far are we? Louis cursed. Unexpectedly, the plot was still changed. I have to rush there now, I really hope Tony is okay. It takes 1.5 hours to reach the army station, but it still takes half an hour to reach the destination. J.A.R.V.I.S said after calculation. Louis clenched his hands tightly, and the leather seat was about to be crushed by him. You can imagine how angry Louis is in his heart now. Abandon all useless things and let the plane speed up to the maximum horsepower. Louis said after regaining his composure. But do as I tell you. Louis didn't like someone denying his decision at such a critical time. Throwing away all useless things is to speed up the rush to the nearest military airport. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 7. A red coral bauble from the deep sea. A case of Arden Estate red wine, Tony's favorite. Handcrafted blanket in lambskin. Everything here is part of Tony's luxurious life. But now they are all kicked off the plane by Louis. Go away, corrupt luxury, labor and management are going to save Tony now. Thank you for your contribution to Tony, goodbye. Louis threw all the items that could be thrown away to reduce weight off the plane. The flight crew even suspected that Louis was going to throw himself down if he was not needed. The aircraft is lighter, said Jarvis, it's a tenth faster. Hearing the first half sentence, Louis was overjoyed. But the second half of the sentence made Louis shake his head helplessly. This improvement is already very high, but it is still not enough. He has done his best. One can only hope that Tony's fate line is strong enough under the world rules. Just hope Tony's okay now, if something happens to Tony. All participants in this matter must die. There was a hint of ferocity in Louis' eyes. This image of a playboy, originally quite a social scum of a capitalist, has never been a good stubble. He intends to compete with Tony for the property of Stark Industries. But he didn't want to get it so easily, it would be too boring. Louis, who has a system by his side, has never been afraid of any challenges. Therefore, no challenge will make Louis feel bored. The plane arced across the sky, breaking through the clouds. Afghanistan. Terrorist armed base. Tony and Ethan are building a small energy device. The injured Tony didn't care about his own pain, the electromagnet on his chest was too much in the way. Tony needs new sources of energy to keep him alive. What are you going to do? Ethan asked curiously while watching Tony drawing the blueprint. This Stark industrial genius has always been the object of Ethan's admiration. A thing that will keep me alive. Tony said as he drew the last strokes on the paper. I want to see the leader of the 10 Commandments gang and say that I agree to their request, but I need raw materials. Tony doesn't know when someone will come to save him, he can only save himself now. As for the 10 Commandments gang, if there is an opportunity in the future, I will come and settle with them slowly. After receiving the news that Tony was willing to cooperate, the leader of the 10 Commandments gang also generously took Tony to visit his arsenal. All made by Stark Industries, which is a bit of an eyesore. Tony has scolded those scumbags in Stark Industries countless times. But this still can't change the facts in front of us. Tony counted the ammunition here, which could almost arm an army, and there were quite a few things he needed in it. Tony asked Ethan to translate the materials he needed. The more Ethan heard it, the more frightened he became. These materials were all on Tony's drawings. It was a steel armor that looked like a human. Ethan hasn't understood Tony's thoughts yet, but he can only rely on Tony's genius thinking if he wants to leave. And at the moment, Louis also flew to the military airport closest to the armed base. Warning, warning, has entered the air defense field, stay away immediately, please stay away immediately, otherwise it will be regarded as an enemy plane. There was a message from the airport control tower. Louis' eyes were cold, and he said in a deep voice, "Don't worry about them, just land forcibly." But the flight crew looked at the anti-aircraft guns erected in the military airport with some concern. "FK!" Louis scolded, his eyes became colder and colder. With such an obvious Stark Industry logo on the plane, are the people at the airport all brain dead? None of this was seen. The airport tower requests a call. The flight attendant trembled a little. He was really afraid that Louis would forcefully land directly and recklessly. "I'm Roddy, Mr. Louis, calm down, our people are already looking for Tony." Colonel Roddy ordered a search operation as soon as he knew Tony was missing. This military airport is just a supply point for him. But he didn't expect to meet Louis here. Roddy knew Louis from Tony. The only person who can freely use Tony's special plane is Louis. "Mr. Louis, Tony's vital signs have stabilized," said Jarvis. Hearing this, Louis' rage's mind suddenly cleared up. Facing the walkie-talkie, he said indifferently, "Application for landing." The airport tower quickly agreed. The plane landed, and Louis whistled and got off the plane. Colonel Roddy came to greet him, but Louis didn't even look at Roddy. "Mr. Louis, we will do our best to find Tony. I hope you will not be reckless. This place is very unstable and there are many militants," Roddy warned. "He .2e." Louis' expression turned cold in an instant. Roddy didn't say it, he really forgot. According to the original world line, it was Tony himself and Ethan who completed the self-rescue operation in the end. This Roddy was just lucky enough to bring Tony back. The full search in his mouth? Louis would not believe a word of it. "Mr. Louis, please watch your behavior." Colonel Roddy frowned. "I heard that Tony's younger brother has a bad personality, but I didn't expect it to be so excessive." For the sake of him being Tony's younger brother, Roddy still didn't care. But Louis didn't intend to just let him go. Grabs Roddy's tie with one hand. "My behavior? I've seen you upset for a long time, come to fight." After Louis learned that Tony's vital signs were stable, he was not so anxious. It's almost time for Tony to build the arc reactor. Louis feels like he has to wait for the perfect time to rescue Tony. But before that, let's have some fun. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 8. Louis' behavior was an insult to Roddy. As a soldier, Roddy moves and reacts very quickly. Cut Louis's middle with one hand, trying to force Louis to let go. Cut. Louis spit in disdain, raised his right foot directly, and kicked Roddy's lower abdomen quickly and accurately. Thump thump. Roddy took a few steps back, looking at Louis in surprise. He didn't expect that Louis, a playboy, would have such a reaction and strength. Shouldn't playboy be like Tony, with burgers and coke every day, luxury cars and beauties? Do you still have time to practice fighting technique? The point is that it is still more powerful than me, a regular soldier? This is outrageous, Nima. Louis flexed his muscles and bones, and he was going to do it for real. Gala. Gala. The sound of finger bones rubbing against each other rang in Roddy's ears. And Luigi's demonic whispers. "Don't worry, I will be gentle." Louis sneered and rushed forward. This battle should be regarded as a warm-up for the G3 battle. Louis felt his blood boil. "No, stop, I don't want to entangle you in such boring things." Roddy didn't want to fight Louis the Freak. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose. After all, Louis was Tony's brother after all. If anything happened to Tony, Louis would be the only designated heir to the Stark family. It's not up to you. Louis jumped a few times and rushed in front of Roddy, his lightning-fast fists from top to bottom, like a hungry tiger rushing for food. Roddy passively parried and backed away, but still fell to the ground. The butt will sit out of a pothole in the sand. Roddy was also angry, quickly got up, and Louis' attack came again. Pedal. One foot stepped on Roddy's position just now, with such strength, Louis did not intend to hold back. "Damn, you pd me off, go back to New York and be gentle with your girls." Roddy squared up, ready to strike first. Louis moved faster, with a wicked smile on the corner of his mouth. "They don't deserve my tenderness, I'm always rough at that time. Louis was still smiling, gentle and courteous, but he was merciless. Roddy's men are still at a disadvantage when they see their own officers fighting with others. None of them had any intention of coming up to help, and they were still applauding from the side. Sir Roddy, come on, kick his A. Wow, sir, you can't do it, did that girl drain your energy last night? Nice, nice dodge. Roddy has a headache, his subordinates are simply a bunch of idiots, don't you see your parents being beaten? Thought we were playing house games? Right in the middle of the battle. Louis' attack speed became faster and faster, and Roddy gradually became overwhelmed. FK. In the future, who would dare to say that Louis is a playboy, a waste who is just waiting to die? He must have smashed the watermelon off the guy's neck with his own gun. Just as Roddy was thinking this, a voice made Roddy break into a cold sweat. Click. The sound of machinery turning made Roddy's movements stiff. This is the sound of the safety of the pistol being opened. Own gun? When did it come into Louis' hands? The cool barrel of the gun was aimed at Roddy's temple. Roddy's men, who were still cheering, fell silent for an instant. I declare that your chief Roddy was kidnapped by me. Louis kicked Roddy hard in the stomach, preventing Roddy from resisting. You, what do you want to do? Roddy couldn't figure out what Louis was planning. I want to kidnap you. Louis said with a cynical smile. He is waiting for this J.A.R.V.I.S data intrusion. J.A.R.V.I.S has just intruded into the database of this military airport. Among them are the terrain around here, as well as the data and intelligence of the major forces. The Ten Commandments gang is naturally one of them, and it is also the largest armed terrorist among them. Mr. Louis, we have finished analyzing the data of the Ten Commandments gang resident. The voice of J.A.R.V.I.S sounded after a long absence, and Louis also breathed a sigh of relief. He lowered his head and clung to Roddy's ear, and said, I'll return the gun to you, and take your men with me to rescue Tony. After that, Louis handed the gun to Roddy. Looking up again, it was that playboy-like lazy expression again. I made a joke with Roddy, please don't mind, I already know Tony's location, come with me to rescue Tony, this is the order of Chief Roddy. The last Roddy officer, Louis deliberately emphasized his tone. Roddy never doubted that if he refused, the possibility of Louis killing him. Louis had another gun in his hand on Roddy. This is a self-defense pistol launched by Stark Industries some time ago, and it is powerful enough to kill people. This one is enough. The gun in Roddy's grip collapsed in an instant. Bet your life? Bet he or Louis who has the fastest hand speed. Ah! I will definitely lose. Roddy knew that he had been kidnapped by Louis now. Seeing his group of simple-minded soldiers, Roddy wanted to cry but had no tears. You idiots, the officer was kidnapped, why are you so happy? This group of silly soldiers lined up one by one, waiting for Roddy to speak. Roddy could only say helplessly, let's go, let's rescue Tony. Chapter 9. The corner of Louis's mouth inadvertently showed a slight curvature. Even those who knew Louis well would just take it as a playboy's kind smile. But Louis had already prepared a way to save Tony. Roddy's soldiers are nothing more than cannon fodder to attract firepower. Even Roddy is just a bigger cannon fodder. Ten Commandments gang resident. The recent hot weather has made the terrorists of the Ten Commandments gang feel restless. Louis immediately recognized the cave that Tony escaped from. There are 2 guards at the door. To be precise, there are guards all around. Roddy, I'll leave it to you to attract the firepower. Louis finished wearing the G3. Fortunately, he had seen it first and added an internal circulation air conditioner to the G3 leather case. Otherwise, in this kind of weather, I am afraid that it will not be hot to death. Roddy looked at the blue and silver intertwined robot beside him. He couldn't find the right words to describe the way Louis looked now, looking like a child's toy. Can this work? Roddy knew drawing fire was necessary to save Tony. The guards of the Ten Commandments gang are too tight. This means that one's own soldiers will be sacrificed. But what about Louis, as the most critical link, what should he do? Roddy didn't trust Louis, even though he was a good fighter. But no matter how strong you are in fighting, you are still afraid of bullets. If bullets don't work, then artillery. Can such a leather case defend against bullets and artillery? Roddy was skeptical. That's a lot of nonsense. Louis rolled his eyes, ignoring Roddy's stupid question. J.A.R.V.I.S was still checking Tony's vitals. This is Louis' request. If Tony's vital signs rise to a certain extent, it means that the arc reactor is completed. As the main radioactive element, palladium element of the reactor. In the short term, it will stimulate Tony's life activities, which is the basis for Louis' judgment. Everyone just lay there in the desert, quietly waiting for the order to be issued. The temperature dropped sharply at night, and Louis turned on the heater for a while. Watch the latest movie in comfort. No matter when, you can't suffer yourself. This is Louis' principle. Just as Louis was about to fall asleep, J.A.R.V.I.S finally spoke. Mr. Louis, the Master's vital signs have begun to rise rapidly. Louis' eyes lit up, G3 was instantly activated, and Red's compound eyes glowed scarlet in the darkness. It's chilling. Everyone was surprised by the changes in G3, and several people even aimed their guns at Louis. Start to act. Louis said coldly. Colonel Roddy sighed helplessly, and gave an order, attract local firepower, here, create a rescue opportunity for Mr. Louis. Roddy's men began to advance slowly, attracting firepower, which did not mean ignoring the enemy's firepower circle. It is most beneficial to kill a few guys without saying a word. It's so slow. Louis snorted coldly, and the salamander was installed on the Scorpio. G3's weapons are all off the shelf from Stark Industries. The salamander howitzer was modified by Tony, and Louis directly used it. Boom! The howitzer with the red tail flame landed precisely on the camp of the Ten Commandments gang. The fragments of the explosion bounced around, and the camp of the Ten Commandments gang was full of ghosts and wolves. Fried or not, Dead Man didn't know. But Roddy's soldiers have been completely exposed to the Ten Commandments gang's sight. Roddy glared at Louis, and he could tell it was on purpose. You. Roddy wanted to question. But the Scorpio, G3 special machine gun, has already reached Roddy's forehead. Be good at drawing fire, I'm going to save Tony now. After Louis said that, he manipulated the G3 and hid in the darkness. The invisible coating in Tony's laboratory works very well in the dark. Roddy looked at the disappearing G3, and swung his fist heavily, hitting the desert in front of him, bringing up a cloud of dust. He rushed out, and together with his soldiers, drew fire for Louis's actions. Louis nodded in satisfaction, it seems that this Roddy is quite interesting. Otherwise, what greeted him would be. Boom! In the cave. There is a round arc reactor on Tony's chest. Before Tony and Ethan had time to be happy, the ground shook for a while. The two of them lost their balance and fell to the ground. Whoa, is this going to war? Looks like we're out of luck, if we get hit here. Tony looked at the cave with a wry smile. This place was transformed from an abandoned mine, and the supporting columns are just some crude planks and scrap steel. I will be buried here forever with 30 tons of soil ore. Ethan took the words. The gunfire outside was getting louder and louder, which seemed to confirm Tony's words that someone wanted to attack the Ten Commandments gang. The earth and rocks in the cave constantly fell, covering the ground with a thick layer. The cave was crumbling and almost collapsed. The members of the Ten Commandments gang in the cave had left the cave a long time ago, their lives were at a critical moment, and no one had time to take care of the imprisoned people. Tony leaned against the cave wall, eyes closed, panting heavily. Ethan, do you know? I also have a younger brother who is also a genius. Before I left, he made a very strange armor. My Mark I was inspired by him. He also said that he hoped that I would be kidnapped. I don't know if I was really kidnapped. Would he be sad? He is also a child left behind by my troubled father, and I always try to make him a little bit better. Maybe never again, and then he can inherit the Stark Industries property, which he always wanted, but Stark Industries is enough for him to squander for several lifetimes. Tony's words became more and more, he even felt his head was dizzy. Rumble. The top of the cave finally couldn't bear its own weight and collapsed. Get out of the way, Tony! Ethan yelled loudly. But Tony just lay there quietly, not moving. A set of blue and silver armor resisted the collapsed stones, and threw them aside like throwing pebbles. Ethan rubbed his eyes frantically. Am I already dead? All hallucinations. Tony also laughed, it was great to see the G3 armor before he died. At this moment, Louis' cynical voice sounded, how long are you going to lie down, brother Tony? Your brother turned into a Kamen Rider to save you, are you happy and want to be grateful? Just give me the shares of Stark Industries, I don't want too much. Qingming reading ceremony. Chapter 10. Louis's broken mouth finally brought Tony back to reality. To be so sentimental. I am so grateful. The emotions that Tony had brewed were gone, and it was really speechless to have such a broken-mouthed brother. Stop talking nonsense, your energy won't last long. Tony judged the situation of G3 at a glance. According to Tony's preliminary judgment, G3's energy is only 60% left. About 15 minutes for G3 to move freely. Absolutely, but enough, Louis agreed, not at all embarrassed by Tony. In fact, the situation was worse than Tony imagined. 40% of the energy reserve is left. 20% of the miscalculation was consumed by Louis' internal circulation air conditioner and watching movies. Let's leave quickly, this place is about to collapse. Ethan shouted loudly. I thought I was going to die, but I didn't expect Tony's younger brother to come out to rescue him wearing G3. This feeling of wandering between life and death is not good at all. Hey, Mr. Egghead, I don't intend to take you with me. Louis frowned. Although I am very grateful to Ethan for saving Tony, but carrying a person again, G3's energy consumption will be faster. Ethan froze in place. Was he abandoned? Louis, this is Dr. Ethan, he saved me, now it's my turn to save him. Tony said dissatisfied. There was an aura that Ethan would not leave, and he would not leave either. Okay, it's a headache. There was nothing Louis could do about Tony's kindness. Perhaps this is why Tony regrets sacrificing himself to save the entire universe. And this cave is the beginning of all karma. Controlling G3 to come to Ethan's side, Louis grabbed Ethan and rushed out of the cave. There were stones falling down in the middle, but they were all split by G3's high-frequency vibration sword. The energy reserve drops at a speed visible to the naked eye. Fortunately, the place where Tony was held was not far from the entrance of the cave. In just 10 seconds, he rushed out of the hole. The blue-silver G3 became obvious in the darkness, even though it was covered in dust, it still shocked everyone. The flames of war left by the shells reflected the whole picture of G3, making everyone tremble. G3 rushed into the battlefield, and everyone forgot to attack for a while. Don't disturb your gunfight game, I'll go first, bye. Louis said quickly, picked up Ethan and Tony who hadn't recovered yet, and ran towards the military airport. He tried his best to protect the two of them in front of him. After regaining their senses, the Ten Commandments gang started shooting crazily at G3. Jingle. The bullets hit G3's back armor, making dense noises. But it will not hinder the speed of G3 at all. Louis has achieved the existing extreme in G3's defense. These bullets will not have any effect on the G3 at all. Colonel Roddy saw G3 rushing out bravely, carrying almost all the firepower to leave, and immediately issued an order. Evacuate our cover and shoot all your bullets out. As the sound of shooting behind him became smaller and smaller, Louis also heaved a sigh of relief. This Roddy is still very good, at least he knows how to assist in evacuation. In the coming Qingming festival, incense sticks must be offered to him. The smell of gunpowder is getting weaker and weaker, and Louis has already controlled G3 and ran a long way. 15% of energy is left. Perfect energy control. Louis is very satisfied with the first battle of G3, the defensive ability is perfect, and the practicality of the weapon system is also very strong. As Louis' first knight armor in the Marvel world, Louis is very content. Tony and Ethan sat on the ground, gasping for breath. This is so exciting. Bullets whizzed past their ears. It's like running a race against Death God. Louis emerges from Game 3 and gives Tony a big hug. Do you miss me, Tony? Feel free to thank me to your heart's content, you're welcome. Louis was a little flustered. But in return it was Tony's introduction to Ethan. Ethan, this is my younger brother. Louis, he has some brain problems, so you don't have to take what he said seriously. Tony didn't want to embarrass himself in front of Ethan. Not to mention Louis, even if you don't come to rescue me, I can come out on my own. I was going to build a big guy, definitely not worse than your G3. Tony said proudly. He even finished the blueprints, the arc reactor, and the frame of the Mark I. As a result, Louis came wearing G3. Poor Mark I was stillborn, and before he could see the sun again, he was strangled to death by Louis. Louis showed considerable tolerance for Tony's arrogant behavior. After all, you are the wounded, so whatever you say is right. Ethan watched Louis and Tony mocking each other with a smile, and the unhappiness about Louis refusing to save him before was gone. Okay, we're ready to leave. There's a military airport not far away. Tony, I've brought out your good times. Louis said indifferently. The good times, Tony's private jet, has been almost destroyed by Louis now. It's okay, but, Louis, do you know who was fighting the Ten Commandments gang? Tony wondered who it might have been fighting before. The group also provided cover for Louis' rescue operation and assisted in the retreat. Louis immediately became hesitant and said, haha, maybe it's another group of terrorists. After all, there are quite a lot of terrorists here, and it's very possible to fight each other. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 11. Tony ignored Louis' arguments. Listening carefully to the faint gunshots, he turned his head and glared at Louis. Those are from the military. These gunshots are a recent product. I've only given them to Roddy's team. Oh, it was discovered. Louis stuck out his tongue, a little innocent, but he didn't mean to repent at all. It seems that I still overlooked some things, such as gunshots. However, there is no way to avoid this. After all, you still need Roddy and his group to buy yourself time. Tony, right now, go back and save them. Louis, I refuse, the energy of G3 is not enough to turn back and forth. Louis didn't think it was a difficult choice to abandon Roddy and his group, and his feeling for Roddy was just average. Definitely, he's Tony's friend, which gives Roddy a lot of points. But adding points and saving lives are two different things. Moreover, Louis has already planned to burn incense for Roddy in the coming Qingming festival. Watching Louis and Tony quarrel, Ethan stayed aside. He is now very sure that Louis's previous idea of abandoning himself was serious. Louis was immediately included in Ethan's list of not to be provoked. He and Tony are two extremes. Tony got really PD, he pushed Louis away and started wearing the G3 armor. Louis didn't go, he went to save people by himself. What are you trying to do? Louis stopped Tony. If you don't go, then I will go, I will not abandon my friend. Tony said seriously. Even if you go, you won't be able to save them. Louis sneered, pouring cold water on them. With the energy of G3, there is no way to fight another fierce battle and return unharmed. The G3 that has lost energy is like a lump of iron, and a small body like Tony can't even move. But Tony clung tightly to G3's armor and wouldn't let go. Louis has a headache. Stupid Oni-chan, why don't you be so merciful to save all living beings? Okay, I'll go, I'll save people. Louis sighed, in the end he couldn't sit back and watch Tony fall into danger. The main reason is that Tony is one of the few relatives of Louis in this world. After putting on the G3 again, the red light of the compound eyes was adjusted to the lowest level by Louis. J.A.R.V.I.S, report energy reserves. Louis asked. There is still 13.69% of the energy. J.A.R.V.I.S is accurate to 2 decimal places. Tony's face changed, he didn't expect G3's energy to be used so quickly. Calculated in this way, G3 rushed into the battlefield and couldn't even fight for too long. Louis. Tony rushed to G3, but the mask was closed. Don't worry, I'll be fine, prepare to cry with gratitude. Louis said in a joking tone. G3 quickly reached a speed that Tony couldn't catch up with, and disappeared into the night. In the direction to go, there is a piece of fire reflecting the sky. J.A.R.V.I.S, why do you think Tony always likes to make trouble for me? Louis asked helplessly. If Mr. Louis had chosen a safer way, there wouldn't be so much trouble. J.A.R.V.I.S replied honestly. So it's still my fault? It's obviously all to save him. J.A.R.V.I.S stopped talking, his handling ability has not been able to deal with emotional issues. The fire was getting closer and closer, Louis turned off the circulating air conditioner, and the chill from the outside world came in instantly. It's so cold. Louis, I hate the cold. In the middle of the battlefield. The Ten Commandments gang who reacted had already surrounded Roddy's people. For those who dared to invade the Ten Commandments gang's residence, they must not be allowed to die too easily. The partners around Roddy fell one by one. Everyone fell into despair. There was absolutely no possibility of survival in such a battle. Roddy also gave up hope. In his opinion, it was impossible for Louis to save him. No one will come to save yourself. I and others have already been abandoned. Just when Roddy and the others were desperate, a cannonball in the sky dragged a long tail flame into the crowd of the Ten Commandments gang. Exploded. Boom. Familiar scene, familiar firelight. Roddy and others felt that their eardrums were going to be blown through. But there is hope on everyone's face. When the blue and silver G3 appeared in front of everyone, this time. No stealth. There is no escape. No ducking. He was dignified and upright, appearing in front of everyone. Louis adjusted the power of G3 to the maximum, and the red light of the compound eyes was like the eyes of a bloodthirsty monster. Scarlet. Leave first, and leave this place to me. Louis said when he came to Roddy and the others. Scorpio's bullets were constantly strafing, forcibly sweeping an open space among the flustered Ten Commandments gang. Louis manipulated G3 and rushed into the Ten Commandments gang. Every bullet of Scorpio caused a burst of blood. Every time the saboteur slashed, people's corpses were separated, and the wounds were burned until they were scorched black, and even the blood evaporated and coagulated. This is absolutely brutal killing. It's chilling. Roddy felt a little sick to his stomach. Such a massacre was simply too brutal. Roddy left quickly with his men. Behind him, the killing continued. In the first battle of G3, someone always needs to pay the price of a little life. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 12. At this moment, G3 is like a god of war. Invulnerability that ignores all damage. At this moment, G3 is like a death god again. Harvesting everyone's fear. The leader of the Ten Commandments gang felt his legs trembling. Where did this monster come from? The most cutting-edge weapons have no way to cause damage to it. Quick, take out the bazooka, blow it up, kill this monster. The leader of the Ten Commandments gang didn't realize that his own voice was trembling. The members of the Ten Commandments gang were already terrified and did not dare to step forward. Countless bullets flew towards G3. But nothing works. The barrel of the submachine gun became red and hot, and it was outputting bullets at an overload. It's hard to imagine how much firepower it poured out. But that blue and silver intertwined devil just stood there, causing everyone in front of him to stumble back in fright. The bazooka was moved out and aimed at G3. Louis' eyes were slightly dark, but he was not afraid at all. G3 opened his hands, like the posture of Jesus when he was being tortured, which stunned the Ten Commandments gang for a moment. This is ignoring. This is provocative. The Ten Commandments were outraged, and their terror was dispelled by anger. Fire it, blow it up, someone yelled. He's looking for death. No one can withstand a rocket fire. Kill the devil. Whoosh. The rocket launcher fired. The orange tail flames dragged the fiery breath towards Louis. Louis laughed wantonly, and the energy of the energy tube was fully activated and gathered into the destroyer in his hand. The blade of the ultra-high-frequency energy sword made a violent noise. The frequency was so fast that the air was distorted. Louis swung the destroyer and slashed forward vigorously. Huge amounts of slashing like lightning and flint on the incoming rocket launchers. Stab it. Boom. Everyone heard the tearing sound. Immediately there were huge amounts of explosions. The flames completely covered G3, burning it into a sea of flames. Cheers erupted among the Ten Commandments gang. After going through hardships, they finally defeated the demon who destroyed the world. It's worth celebrating, it's worth cheering. The demon has been wiped out. Ten Commandments gang hail. We have defeated the evil enemy. They chanted their beliefs, and the huge figure in the sea of flames stood unharmed. Indifferent, lonely, arrogant. A huge amount of crack appeared on the ground, and the split edge was burned into coke by the energy of the ultra-high-frequency vibrating sword. That sword, while splitting the bazooka, still had enough power to chop on the ground. All the remaining energy of the energy tube was gathered in this slash of the destroyer. Louis watched the damage done by this blow with satisfaction. Looks pretty good. Almost all the energy has been overdrawn, and the power is really extraordinary. The warning sound of J.A.R.V.I.S had already sounded for dozens of seconds. Then it was ignored by Louis. If it weren't for the J.A.R.V.I.S system having an independent power supply, J.A.R.V.I.S would not have the energy to speak now. There is really no energy left. In the last sword attack, all the energy was completely consumed. But the effect is remarkable. The members of the Ten Commandments broke down and crawled on the ground, trying to get away from the demon. If your legs are weak, use your hands. Louis saw a very interesting scene. The members of the Ten Commandments gang squirmed like worms on the ground and fled. What a boring opponent, J.A.R.V.I.S, let's go. Louis yawned lazily. It's all over, time to go back. Without energy, Louis could only support G3 with his own strength. I will definitely not use such a thick carapace next time, it's too heavy. Louis complained. Although the defense is very good, it is a bit too reluctant for one person to resist this pair of armor. It's more fun to be a playboy than to fight in armor. Tony looked in the direction of the firelight. There was huge amounts of explosions there just now. Tony was really worried about Louis, and he even regretted why he put Louis in danger. Tony insisted on waiting for Louis here, and Roddy stayed here to protect and accompany him. Several of his men were seriously injured and sent back to the military airport for emergency treatment. Roddy didn't even know if he should hate Louis or not. It was obvious that he had kidnapped him and threatened him to attract firepower. But in the same way, it was Louis who returned to the battlefield without hesitation to save himself and others. Tony, let's go back, Roddy persuaded. In the direction of the fire, there was no sound for a long time. The battle was over, but that blue and silver figure hadn't appeared yet. May have been. Tony didn't speak, and pushed Roddy's hand away. Louis saved Roddy because of his own words, but he was deeply involved in the battlefield. Tony couldn't forgive himself, he wanted to wait here until he gave up. Before he knew it, tears had covered Tony's face. Why are you crying? If the guy Louis who came to fight for the property died, he should be happy. Tony's eyes were wet with tears, and everything in front of him was hazy. A familiar figure appeared in front of Tony, accompanied by that cynical and awkward tone. Yo, isn't this my dear brother Tony? I'll just say it, and I'll make you cry with gratitude and tears in front of me. Ha 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 ha. Louis smiled recklessly. Tony Rage's voice sounded, Louis, go to hell with me, I just got sand in my eyes. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 13. If you don't want it, give it to me. Tony boarded his own good times. Ethan, Roddy, and others also followed back to New York. Seeing the messy scene inside the plane, Tony wondered if he got into the wrong plane. Louis. Tony's voice has a long tail, which makes people feel creepy. I can explain, Tony. Where's my Arden wine? This. What about the handmade lambskin blanket? Where's the painting I hung in the cabin? That. Louis, from tomorrow on, get the hell out of here and sleep on the main road. Tony was furious. Gone with the Times is his favorite private jet. As a result, Louis was so devastated. It was inhumane. To Tony's threats, Louis went in one ear and out the other. This is not once or twice, at least neither of them took this verbal threat seriously. Because in the next second, the two began to discuss the issue of G3. You shouldn't be loading so many soft settings in the G3, the power consumption is too fast. Tony pointed at G3. After knowing the reason why G3's energy was used so quickly, Tony almost kicked Louis away in anger. The power consumption of the internal circulation air conditioner is also too large. The carapace is too thick. We can reduce the weight and replace it with lighter alloy steel. The decline in defense is inevitable, but it is enough to block bullets. Do you think who will use your body to resist the rocket launcher as well as you? Tony almost dismissed Louis' design as useless. Sorry, Mr. Louis. J.A.R.V.I.S apologized sincerely, and an apologetic JPG image of J.A.R.V.I.S appeared on the laptop. Even J.A.R.V.I.S was taught by Louis to use emoticons. Louis glared at the computer fiercely, it must be the traitor J.A.R.V.I.S who informed him. He handed over all the combat records to Tony. What are you staring at? Am I wrong? Tony asked angrily. It wasn't once or twice that Louis remained stubborn. But this time it went too far, actually putting himself in danger. Louis was disciplined honestly, if you say you are wrong, you are right. Big deal, I'll change my posture next time to resist rockets. If you don't change your nature, you are talking about Louis. Ethan and Roddy looked at Louis like a good baby in disbelief. Oh God! I must have been bombarded with howitzers in the brain. This is definitely an illusion. How could this devil be like a good boy? New York. LaVadia Airport. The good times slowly landed on the private apron. Pepper had already received news from Tony, and was waiting for Tony's return here. Glad to see you're okay. There were tears in Pepper's eyes, obviously she had cried a lot. Before Tony could answer, Louis's voice came from behind him. Wow! Let rang! Rang rang! Louis yelled as he slid down the plane's banister. A perfect landing action, with a handsome 360-degree turn. The eyes seem to be full of stars, and also have an eclectic evil spirit. Miss Pepper, are you interested in having a drink tonight? Louis asked gently. Sorry, she has to deal with the company's work at night, so she's not free. Tony stopped between Louis and Pepper, subconsciously declaring his sovereignty. Working overtime at night? Tony, you are a black-hearted capitalist. Louis complained. It doesn't matter if you drink or not, Louis just wants to make Tony angry. Pepper looked at Tony's body, the clothes had a lot of dust to hide the blood. The bruises on his face and arms are still vivid. Obviously suffered inhuman treatment. But thankfully, Tony came back safe and sound. Tony, you look like this, you need to go to the hospital. Pepper reminded. Tony walked in the front, suddenly looked back at Pepper, and said, No, I'd rather eat a cheeseburger now, than take a shower and sleep. Cheeseburger, take a shower and sleep. Pepper thought Tony was a little unreasonable. You are injured now, looking as if you have been trampled by a dozen bulls in turn. You tell me you want to eat a cheeseburger right now and shower and sleep? Well, there's also a press conference, Tony said seriously and heavily. Feeling that I didn't emphasize enough, I added again, a press conference, this is very important. But... Pepper wanted to say something more, but Tony had already walked away. Louis came up and put his hands on Pepper's shoulders. Pepper thought Louis would have some good advice. Then what was exchanged was a sentence from Louis. Come on, I like you. Good ghost. The two brothers of Stark Industries are simply the soul of soul. Pepper wanted to quit. Anyway, let me know the purpose of your press conference. Stark Industries, Convention Center. Tony took the cheeseburger that Louis handed over. Thank you, it's the taste of the one I like. Tony took a bite and mumbled as he chewed. You're welcome, do you want to close Stark Industries' Weapon Research and Development Department? Louis guessed Tony's thoughts. Tony froze for a moment, not expecting that Louis knew what he wanted to do. But Tony didn't argue, just nodded. Louis' eyes suddenly lit up, and said, Brother Tony. Tony shivered and took 3 steps back. Tony asked, What do you want to do? Once Louis uses this title, nothing good will happen. Tony regretted eating the hamburger Louis bought. Cannibalism is soft-mouthed, this is an old saying. Louis said with a smile, Weapon R&D Department, if you don't want it, give it to me. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 14 The shortest press conference in history. If it wasn't for half a cheeseburger still in his mouth, Tony would be slamming it in Louis' cynical face by now. What are you kidding? The Weapon Research and Development Department, that is, let it go. And, to Louis? God knows what he'll come up with. Louis looked at Tony with a trace of sincerity on his face, but Tony ignored it. Hey, Tony, it's great that you're safe and sound, I'm so worried about those bloody terrorists, I'm going to smash them to pieces one day. Louis was still thinking about how to persuade Tony to hand over the Weapon Research and Development Department to himself, and then he heard an annoying voice. Obadiah Stan. The goddamn bald man, pretending to be concerned, wanted to come up and give Tony a hug. Tony could only raise the hamburger in his hand a little higher, and turned around to avoid it. Pretty. Louis silently praised Tony in his heart. I'm also glad I'm safe. Obadiah uncle, I'm rushing to attend the press conference now, what's the matter, we'll talk later. Tony quickly disposed of the hamburger in his hand. Stuffed the greased paper of hamburger into Obadiah's hand. Louis, entertain Obadiah uncle. Tony winked at Louis, telling him to hold Obadiah down. Louis returned a knowing glance, but Tony ignored it. Obadiah looked at the hamburger paper in his hand, his face became gloomy. This Tony, is getting more and more out of control. If it wasn't for Stark Industries still needing Tony's invention, he would have already done it to Tony. The more Obadiah thought about it, the more angry he crumpled the bread paper into a ball. The degree of gnashing of teeth made Louis feel uncomfortable for Obadiah. Still smashed into ashes? Do you really think that I don't know that you are the one behind the scenes? There was a hint of ruthlessness in Louis' eyes. Sooner or later, he would take this Obadiah's ashes away. After venting his emotions on the ball of paper, Obadiah turned around with a kind smile. Louis, I haven't seen you for a few days. You look handsome again. I like models or celebrities recently. Are you free to play? Obadiah treated Louis very kindly. To Obadiah, Louis was more of a playboy than Tony was. Also, easier to handle than Tony. After Tony's death, Louis is the perfect successor, and Obadiah can also achieve his goal of controlling the Stark industry. Obadiah uncle, I miss you very much too. Tony has restricted my travels during this time, otherwise I would have gone to find you. Louis is also an old fox. He is still an old fox who knows the development of the plot. A few words can make Obadiah laugh out loud. In Louis' view, he is just playing with a monkey. Still a bald monkey. Obadiah is much more courageous than Ethan. Ethan didn't dare to be alone with himself. Are you that scary? Louis rubbed his Jongtong's face, which is full of women of all ages. Isn't Ethan a gay? As Tony walked into the center of the venue, countless media reporters rushed forward to interview Tony. Be quiet, everyone, please sit in your seats and ask questions in an orderly manner. Pepper stopped Tony and escorted Tony into the press conference venue. No matter where Tony goes, everyone is in the spotlight. Because he is Tony. Tony Stark? Tony really attracts media reporters, and he is the focus of attention wherever he goes. Obadiah said intentionally or unconsciously beside Louis. Louis sneered, pretend, let's see how long you can pretend. Obadiah was not discouraged by Louis' ignorance. Sowing dissension is a long-term thing. He needs patience, patience. When I get Stark industry, a waste like Louis must be imprisoned and sold to African tribes, Obadiah thought viciously in his heart. He has always been a person who must correct his flaws. The press conference started amidst countless flashing lights. Underneath, countless reporters raised their hands high. They have too many questions to ask. For example, the bruise on Tony's face. For example, the case of weapons experiments. Another example is some gossip about Tony. God, no one really thinks that the press conference is all about serious issues. Ahem. Tony stood in front of the microphone, coughed a few times, and cleared his throat. Louis knew Tony was up to something. Everyone, I know you have a lot of questions you want to ask me, but I'm not interested in any of your questions. Hearing Tony's words, the reporters below were in an uproar. We the media have the right to know. You can't do this, you are violating our rights. This is a free country, and you are trampling on freedom. Obadiah rubbed his hairless scalp and complained, what a bad character. Louis nodded, deeply appreciative. Tony's character is really bad, compared to himself, he is really too cute. Ignoring the voices of the reporters below, Tony said to himself, I'm going to shut down Stark Industries' Weapon Research and Development Department. Then, this press conference ends here. Thank you very much for coming. After speaking, Tony stepped off the stage, leaving enough space for the reporters to react. As soon as this statement came out, everyone was stunned. There was a complete silence in the arena. Obadiah was the first to react, and almost rushed to the backstage. Louis could hear him cursing. No, Tony, you can't do that, no, I won't allow it. Louis looked contemptuously at the red-eyed Obadiah, with a smile on his lips. This is really the shortest press conference in history, Mr. Louis. A voice rang in Louis' ear. Chapter 15. Louis followed the voice and looked over, the speaker should not be too familiar. Philosophy Phil Coulson. Rate belongs to SHIELD. However, they now declare to the outside world that they are still called the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistic Support Agency. In the original play, Phil Coulson was supposed to ask Pepper for a question. Now I found it on my head. Louis put away the smile on his face, and the pride in his bones was cold and refused to be 3 feet away. Mr. Louis, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Philosophy Phil Coulson, and I belong to the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistic Support Agency. Phil Coulson briefly introduced himself, and he came to ask Louis about Tony. Although in the message, Louis is not a friendly playboy. But Phil Coulson is confident in his mission shit. Louis didn't even look at Phil Coulson, turned and left. He doesn't want anything to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. right now, even though S.H.I.E.L.D. has the space gem that Louis really wants. But S.H.I.E.L.D. also has a large group of undercover agents. It is really not easy for director Nick Fury to persist until now. Mr. Louis, Mr. Louis. Phil Coulson chased Lewis. He did not want to fail this mission. God knows how much merit it takes to be promoted from an 8th level agent to a 9th level agent. This Lewis is really the same as rumored, with a strange primordial personality. Obviously a smile could be seen in his eyes, but there was only a thin line between a smile and a rejection. Lewis walked into the backstage and said to the 2 security guards, "The one behind is a reporter from a small newspaper, please help get out, thank you." He rushed to watch Obadiah's joke, and didn't have time to talk to Phil Coulson. "Yes, Mr. Louis." Seeing that it was Lewis, the security guard immediately agreed. As security guards, what they hate the most are these tabloid reporters, who always add to their workload. It's not polite to deal with Phil Coulson. Soon after came Phil Coulson shouting, "You can't treat me like this. I am a staff member of the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. Hey, Mr. Louis, Mr. Louis." Boom. Phil Coulson was thrown out of the convention center trash dump by 2 security guards. It was finally quiet. Lewis rubbed his ears and came to the 2nd floor of the exhibition center in the background. Obadiah was chattering around Tony. "Tony, you can't do this. How much money will the Weapons Research and Development Department bring us every year? But how much harm has it brought to the whole world?" Tony said coldly. "There are always weapons manufacturers making weapons, why can't it be us?" "Tony, you are not a child anymore, don't be so self-willed, tell the group of reporters outside that you were just talking when you were drunk." Obadiah constantly dissuades Tony. The Weapon Research and Development Department is the main income of Stark Industries, and Obadiah can make countless profits from it every year. Smuggling is always the most profitable business. Obadiah looked at the steadfast Tony, and the killing intent in his eyes became more and more obvious. Cutting off people's wealth is like killing their parents. PSST. Louis leaned against the wall. Watching Obadiah's Joker-like performance, I accidentally laughed out loud. Tony and Obadiah's eyes looked over. "Sorry, you continue, I just thought of happy things." Lewis made a gesture of please, but had no intention of leaving. "Lewis, you come to persuade your big brother, he actually wants to close the Weapon Research and Development Department, does he think that his mansion and sports car are all blown by strong winds?" Obadiah looked like he hated iron but not steel. It meant something, these words were all for Lewis. Louis made an innocent face and looked at Tony, the 2 of them making eye contact. "Louis, need help?" "Tony, everything will be fine if you don't make trouble." "Lewis, don't worry, I have my sense of proportion." Seeing Tony's threatening gaze, Lewis could only say sorry to Obadiah. "I didn't have a good impression of you at first, but you insisted on messing with me." Lewis, who was named by Obadiah, came to Tony's side with brisk steps. Some helplessly said, "Obadiah uncle, although Tony is already an adult, but I am still a child, I even live and eat at Tony's house. I can't help you, and I heard that Tony was injured by a weapon we made this time. I also think that in order to avoid this kind of problem from happening again in the future, it would be better to stop the Weapon Research and Development Department. Otherwise, if something happens to Tony, my long-term meal ticket will be gone." Louis' tone was very lazy and natural, as if I was going to hang out at Tony's house and wait to die for the rest of my life. Tony shot Louis a glare. "If it weren't for you wanting to compete with me for Stark Industry, I might really believe what you said." Obadiah was almost vomiting blood from Louis' words. He thought Louis was a waste playboy, but he didn't expect that Louis had surpassed the limit of waste. "Tony is dead, Stark Industries is yours. You pig brain, don't you think about it." Seeing Obadiah's appearance, Tony said, "Obadiah uncle, you don't need to worry about this matter, the Weapons Research and Development Department, I'm locked up, God can't stop me." Chapter 16. But Obadiah wanted to say something else, but was interrupted by Tony. Tony sighed, and shouted in a deep voice, "Obadiah uncle! What's wrong?" Obadiah felt a little uncomfortable, and Tony's tone seemed to be full of wind and rain. Tony came in front of Obadiah, and said in an unquestionable tone, "I am the chairman of Stark Industries, and I have absolute control." In a word, it directly negates all the efforts of Obadiah. "What do you want to say?" "Sorry, I'm the chairman. I have absolute control over Stark Industries. If you have any thoughts, hold them in my heart." That's what Tony wanted Obadiah to understand. Obadiah's face became more and more ugly, almost dripping ink. Tony turned and left, ignoring Obadiah. He needs to go back to sleep now. Looking at the silent Obadiah, Louis patted him on the shoulder and said in an encouraging tone, "Come on, Obadiah uncle, you can definitely do it." Then Louis was in a good mood and ready to go home. When G3 faced the last bazooka, there were still many flaws, and Louis needed to redesign it. The two Stark brothers were seen driving away from the convention center. Obadiah's clenched fist slammed heavily on the wall. Boom! Hiss. Ah, damn Tony, I will never let you go, and Louis, go to hell, go to hell. Obadiah protects his right hand, jumping into a rage, really a bit like a monkey. In Tony's car, Louis was playing with his mobile phone, playing with JARVIS. The voice of J.A.R.V.I.S suddenly rang out. "Mr. Louis, Obadiah's car just left the convention center, and the direction is his villa in Mel Street." "Okay, then don't worry about him." Du-Men nodded and said. He was really worried that after being provoked by Tony, Obadiah would really go crazy and come up with a car attack. Tony glanced at Louis in the rearview mirror and smiled. Louis usually looks cynical, but he also has his own ideas. "Louis, what do you think I should do next?" "What do you mean?" "The Weapon Research and Development Department has been shut down, and the market value of Stark Industry will shrink by at least 20%. I may not be able to support you as a burden." He. Tui. "Now that you think about it, why did you go so early?" Louis rolled his eyes. "What Tony did on a whim, are you still blaming me now? How about you hold another press conference? Just say you were drunk before." Louis felt that Obadiah's previous proposal was very good. "I can also drop you out of the car and walk back by yourself," Tony threatened. "If you don't close it, you'll be fine. Leave it to me, or if you close it externally, I'll be responsible internally," Louis suggested. Tony didn't speak, apparently lost in thought. Finally shook his head. "No, there are ghosts in the company, so it is absolutely impossible for the large quantities of arms to be from the common people." Tony thought again of the 10 Commandments gang's warehouse full of ammunition, enough to arm several troops. "Are you suspicious of the director of the company? Or just Obadiah alone?" Although Louis knew that this was Obadiah's fault, did Louis know and Tony knew? Nourishing. Tony slammed on the brakes, and the sports car pulled over to the side of the road. "FK, can you tell me in advance when you brake?" Louis' head hit the windshield, and it hurt a little. "Are you also suspicious of Obadiah?" Tony wouldn't call Obadiah uncle in private, and neither would Louis. "It's just a respectful speech before people, then I strongly advise you not to shut down the Weapon Research and Development Department. It's hard not to doubt it. He was also the first director to come to you. Although it can be said that he cares, but without you, I can inherit Stark Industry. There is no difference to him, which is very doubtful. Also, don't you think Obadiah has a bad face?" Tony was silent. Louis' suspicion was really justified. "Makes you want to kick him out of the car." Tony now seriously suspected that Louis' second sentence was provocative, and the third sentence was mocking. And with a very strong contempt for appearance. "See what it's all about? What does it mean to have a bad face? Do you rely on appearance to distinguish good from bad?" Ignoring Louis' nonsense, Tony hurried home to sleep, missing his bed at home. In the past few days in the cave, Tony really should die. "I can't sleep well, and the stuff on my chest is scary." Looking at the scenery outside the window, Louis felt even more murderous towards Obadiah. However, if Obadiah didn't die, it would be really difficult for him to raise Obadiah's ashes. "It seems that we still need to provoke Obadiah." Triggerwing's headquarters. Phil Coulson had no choice but to return here, and reported to Fury about his contact with Tony. "Stark? You mean, you were thrown in the trash and came back without Tony seeing it?" Fury did not expect that Phil Coulson, the standard template for agents, would make mistakes. This is really rare. And it fails without even touching the target person. "Yes, I miscalculated the information. I thought Louis would know more about the situation, but his character is really bad. I will contact Tony's secretary next time. Pepperpots. It's okay, take it easy, Phil Coulson, our most important thing right now is still on Dr. Banner, our people have lost track of Dr. Banner, it's bad." Chapter 17. Mel Street Villa District. There is a whole row of villas here. It is also one of several properties in Obadiah. The basement was transformed by Obadiah into a textile lobby. On the big screen, a man in a jacket appeared with a look of panic on his face. The wind and dust, the flames of war and the influence of gunpowder smoke made him look 10 years older. If Tony and Louis were here, they would definitely recognize at a glance that this was the leader of the 10 Commandments gang. It's okay if you don't look at it, but Obadiah became very angry when he saw the cowardly appearance of this guy. How the hell did you do it? Get Tony back. Don't you know how much this has affected my plans? Obadiah vented all his anger today on the leader of the 10 Commandments gang. In his opinion, it must be the negligence of the 10 Commandments gang that allowed Tony to escape back, and all the responsibilities for this should be borne by the 10 Commandments gang themselves. For the next batch of weapons supply, the price will return to the original price. Obadiah said coldly. This is a punishment, and it is also making up for some of my losses. As a shareholder of Stark Industries, it's impossible for Obadiah not to stockpile some munitions himself. Now it's time to let it go. No, you can't do this. I lost more than 200 brothers, and you want us to take responsibility. It's not fair. The leader of the 10 Commandments gang was also angry. My men are dead. I almost died too. The weapon was not retrieved, and the person ran away. I still have to bear the responsibility? Is there any reason? Is there still Wang Fa? In the eyes of the 10 Commandments gang, Obadiah has become synonymous with black hearts. None of these capitalists has a good thing, and they are all vampires. Isn't waste just for taking responsibility? Obadiah didn't care how many people these terrorists died. It was not a joke to say that these terrorists would be crushed to ashes. A group of poor ghosts who have no money and want weapons. If it weren't for them to do things for him, he would never sell these weapons at a reduced price. You didn't tell us what we're going to face? That's the devil. It killed so many of my brothers. It's almost immortal. The leader of the 10 Commandments gang shouted loudly. I tried my best to describe the scene I saw that day. What the devil? I think you should see a doctor. Obadiah said coldly. These guys from the 10 Commandments gang were useless, and Obadiah didn't bother to talk to them. Just when Obadiah was about to turn off the call video, the leader of the 10 Commandments gang suddenly took out a spliced drawing. This, I found in the cave where Tony was held, is the weapon he was going to build. Obadiah's hand that was about to press the disconnect button stopped, and the remote video was a little blurry. It is not clear what is drawn on the drawing. But if it's really the weapon Tony's planning to build, it's going to be worth a lot. Obadiah looked down, obviously thinking. After a while. I need to get the blueprint first. No, I won't trust you vampire anymore. Come on, aren't we friends? Weapons are still at the price we agreed on. The leader of the 10 Commandments gang was a little moved, but he still insisted on his principles. I can give you half of the drawings, and I'll give you the rest after the deal is over. A flash of anger flashed in Obadiah's eyes, but it quickly disappeared without a trace. He raised his head and said with a smile, no problem, I wish us a happy cooperation. Happy cooperation. Louis thought that because he rescued Tony in advance, Mark I was not produced. Obadiah also won't get the wreckage of the Mark I. There will be no subsequent generation of Iron Overlord. In this way, if you want to crush Obadiah to ashes, you need a little trick. Moreover, Obadiah also holds 10.7% of Stark's shares, which is not a small fortune. But Louis didn't know that Tony's drawings still fell into the hands of the 10 Commandments gang and passed into the hands of Obadiah. Tony is now thinking about how to improve the performance of G3. J.A.R.V.I.S. Is Tony still awake? Louis asked. Master has been asleep for 12 hours, J.A.R.V.I.S. replied. Okay, J.A.R.V.I.S., come and read with me, Tony, you are such a pig. Louis would never let go of Black Tony, and he would pull J.A.R.V.I.S. together. Tony closed all contact methods before going to bed, causing countless people in the outside world to look for Tony. This guy is actually asleep. Pat clap clack. A certain pig rubbed its eyes, stunned by Louis, and walked into the bathroom in a daze and slippers. When passing by Louis, he gave Louis a hard look. J.A.R.V.I.S., didn't you say Tony was sleeping? Louis glared at the J.A.R.V.I.S. expression pack on the computer. The two brothers, even if they stare at others, are exactly the same. Tony took a shower in the bathroom, washing away all the depression and irritability of the past few days. Refreshed. Tony, who came out of the bathroom, stared at Louis, and said slowly, I heard you called me a pig, and you want to drag J.A.R.V.I.S to call me. No, I didn't. Louis opened his mouth to deny. My lord, I didn't. Mr. Louis instigated me. J.A.R.V.I.S spoke at the right time. Louis cursed, J.A.R.V.I.S, you are a traitor. Chapter 18. Louis, betrayed by J.A.R.V.I.S, ends up taking on the job of making Tony's breakfast. Cheeseburger, every day is a cheeseburger, Tony, your stomach is almost turning into a cheeseburger. Louis complained. Tony didn't feel anything about it, he felt like he was starving and skinny these days. Beep. The doorbell was rang. J.A.R.V.I.S immediately called out the camera at the door. It's Ethan and Roddy. Why are these two guys together? Louis looked at the two curiously. After I came back, I didn't see these two guys, but now they came together. It seems that during this time, the two were together. Click. With consent J.A.R.V.I.S opened the door. This is Tony's home. Roddy introduced to Ethan. He has been here many times and is very familiar with it. Ethan nodded and followed Roddy into Tony's house. Long time no see, Dr. Ethan. Louis stood behind the door and gave Ethan and Roddy a big surprise. In fact, it is more appropriate to describe it as frightened. Ethan was so frightened that he fell to the ground. TCH, it's really boring. Louis sighed. I thought of Obadiah, who is also an egghead, why is there such a big difference? Sitting on the sofa, the two were flattered for a moment when they saw the coffee that Louis brought over. We must be crazy. This is definitely not the Louis Stark we know. The world is crazy. Tony sat across from the two of them, and Tony looked pretty good after a night of rest. What do you two want to see me for? Roddy glanced at Louis, then back to Tony, leaning forward, resting his elbows on the coffee table. It's like this. Regarding the armor that appeared in this rescue operation, I would like to ask how much it costs and whether it can be used for small-scale armament. As Roddy spoke, he kept sneaking glances at Louis' expression. Tony didn't expect that Roddy came here for this matter. There was a moment of silence, without speaking. The combatability of G3 is shocking. Even Tony has to admit that the G3 built by Louis is comparable to a killer. Equipped with different weapons, there will be different combat styles. But the right to decide on this matter is not in his own hands. Seeing that Tony didn't speak, Roddy thought Tony was worried. Tony, you need to know that your closure of the Weapons Research and Development Department is a very serious matter for the military. For a long time, relying on the advanced weapons of Stark Industries, our soldiers have always been able to take the initiative on the battlefield. But once the Weapon Research and Development Department is closed, the cooperation between the Army and Stark Industries may come to an end. Roddy felt compelled to remind his friend how serious it was to shut down the Arms Development Department. Stark Industry has been able to thrive so much, largely because of the support of the military. If you dare to touch Stark Industries, you are making an enemy of the Army. But now, the link linking the two is broken. When he heard the news, Roddy wondered if Tony was crazy. So, he, who was supposed to be on vacation, came to Tony right away. Tony, think about it. Roddy said seriously. Roddy, you have no idea what I saw in there, Stark Industries weapons all over the warehouse. You can also ask Ethan, where did Stark Industries weapons end up being used? I hope weapons can be used to protect peace, but weapons create greater disasters. I'm an executioner, and so is Stark Industries. Tony lowered his head, his tone very disappointed. Roddy sighed, looked at Ethan, and saw Ethan nod. Prove that everything Tony said is true. Roddy knew more about it than Tony, but because of that, he was the least qualified to persuade Tony. I'll report your situation to the Lieutenant General, but it might turn out. Roddy didn't continue. The value of Stark Industries, which has lost its Weapon Research and Development Department, is not as great as imagined. The end result will not be very good. Roddy was about to leave, but was stopped by Louis. Wait a minute, Colonel Roddy. Louis smiled and called to Roddy. Roddy only felt a creep on his back, which was a shadow to Louis. That bloody and brutal G3 is still engraved in Roddy's mind so far, and it won't go away for a long time. Is there anything else, Mr. Louis? Roddy used the honorific. Tony also looked at Louis, wondering what he was going to do. I heard that the army is interested in my G3 armor. I wonder if there is any intention to cooperate. Louis thought of a way to continue to maintain the relationship between the two parties. Since I am interested in the armor of Kamen Rider G3, I may take this as an opportunity to get more things. No matter what, Stark Industry is also his own property, and he can't just watch it shrink like this. Roddy looked at Tony, who didn't know G3 was Louis' masterpiece. G3 was built by Louis, you just need to talk to him. Tony also understood Louis' plan, and this sentence was regarded as a tacit agreement. Handed over the link with the army to Louis. Equivalent to an indirect agreement, Louis established a new department to replace the original Weapons Research and Development Department. Mr. Louis is willing to provide G3 armor to the army. There was a hint of excitement in Roddy's eyes. There is no doubt about the power of G3. If it can be installed, I am afraid that one team can dominate a war. Forget about G3, it's a big energy player. I have a new set of armor, but I don't know if you need it. Louis smiled, and he really thought of an interesting Kamen Rider armor. Not G3? Roddy frowned, but he was still very interested. Even if it wasn't as good as G3, it was still acceptable. I don't know what kind of armor it is. Roddy asked. Louis said slowly, I named it Kamen Rider. Pure. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 19. Pure. Roddy pronounced the awkward name. Tony and Ethan also came together, and they were also very interested. Tony was eager to see Louis' new armor. His own Mark I broke down in the middle, and now needs to rebuild a new armor. It would be better if you can learn some experience. Pure is just an idea, but I will build it as soon as possible. This is a mass-produced Kamen Rider I imagined for individual combat. Louis has many mass-produced Kamen Riders in his mind. Right now the Kamen Rider June is more suitable. There is no name in the original play, but the name of the only user who appeared. June, was used by Louis to name this set of mass-produced armor. Roddy has some hesitation, suspecting that Louis is bluffing himself. How can there be a condition that is just an idea? But when I think of the two members of the Stark family, they are both such unreliable masters. Even more absurd things have been done by Tony, and it seems that Louis is not outrageous. What are the expected performance parameters? Roddy asked, so that he could go back and have an explanation. It's better than the original version of G3, with 1 ton of fist strength and 3.5 tons of leg strength. The weapons and equipment can be matched freely, and the defense is weaker, but the speed is faster than G3. The most important thing is that I am going to reduce its weight. A trained soldier can definitely adapt to such a weight. This also means that in the case of losing energy, the combat effectiveness can still be guaranteed. With full energy, it should be able to move for more than an hour. These are the parameters of Louis compared to G3. The pure basic parameters are higher than the original version of G3, especially in terms of speed and leg strength. The more Roddy listened, the brighter his eyes became. Such data is simply a combat armor that perfectly matches individual combat. Roddy immediately made a decision and said, I will go back and report to the Lieutenant General immediately. I hope we can cooperate happily. Louis said lightly, it's a pleasant cooperation. Roddy went back to report to his boss, but Ethan stayed. Roddy had conducted an investigation on Ethan's identity before, and now that the investigation was over, Ethan was returned to Tony. He thought Ethan belonged to Tony. Louis and Tony stared at each other. Why is there an extra living person in the house? Oh, what a headache. Why don't you throw it on the street and see who will pick him up? Louis suggested. Tony gave Louis a white look, always bringing up some unrealistic ideas. Ethan watched the conversation between Louis and Tony in horror, his entire back was soaked. It made him wonder if coming to Tony was a bad decision. Send Ethan back to his hometown. Tony thought of the hometown Ethan told himself, and it should be suitable for Ethan. Although it is destroyed, it is still being rebuilt, and there is still hope. Stark Industries can also provide a rebuilding fund if needed. No, I won't go back. I can't save them. Only by taking up arms can I protect my hometown. Let me stay here and let me participate in the pure creation. After Ethan said this, he felt that he must be crazy. The main person in charge of pure is Louis, not Tony. A lunatic like Louis would definitely not agree. Ethan lowered his head, not daring to meet Louis' eyes. He is panicking. Very flustered. He must have been bewitched just now to say that. Oops, what to do now? Tony looked at Louis, and now the person in charge of Kamen Rider's pure armor is Louis, and it is naturally up to Louis to decide whether Ethan will stay or not. Even if Ethan is Tony's savior, Tony has no right to interfere with Louis' choice. Do you really want to join Pure Forge? Louis asked, his tone becoming serious. Yes, I want to join. Ethan replied firmly, but after answering, he continued to tremble. Louis looked at Ethan curiously, obviously very scared. All trembling with fear. But the tone is so firm. Well, Louis takes back what he said before, Ethan is a pretty good egghead. I promised, remember to report tomorrow. Louis laughed, this is his first employee, isn't he? The weapons development department was closed, but the armor development department was established from now on. Ethan suddenly looked up, in disbelief. He couldn't believe that Louis would agree to his request. He thought he would face Louis' cynicism. Louis' back disappeared at the door, he needed to prepare pure design. Lying comfortably on the sofa, Tony smiled and said, isn't it strange about Louis' character? Ethan nodded. Don't blame Primordial for Louis' character, it's completely impossible for people to understand his thoughts. He is like that. For people who are not recognized by him, even if he is smiling on his face, his heart is cold. If recognized by him, he will reveal his true side. Ethan, you are very lucky, you have entered the inspection period of Louis. Tony is also very happy that Ethan can be recognized by Louis. Definitely, the happiest thing is that there is one more person beside Louis who is recognized by him. Chapter 20. Reduce the area of structural armor and use structural armor only in lethal areas. The rest of the parts are made of polymer nanomaterials to ensure the ability. At least one that can stop bullets. Inside, I plan to still use non-Newtonian fluids as buffers. But try to reduce the thickness as much as possible. Louis flicked at the image in the air, he was discussing with Tony. It is not difficult to make pure. But to ensure quality and mass production, Tony is needed to help. What about weapons? High-frequency vibrating swords are not suitable for such lightweight armor, and neither are howitzers. Tony was checking the weapon system designed by Louis, but found nothing. Did you not plan to design weapons for this suit of armor? That is definitely, equipped with a special weapon for a standard armor? Am I bored? The standard weapon of the army is very good, let them choose whatever they want. Louis had no intention of designing exclusive weapons from the beginning. With that free time, he can upgrade G3 to G3X. Anyway, it's all standard armor, and you can sweep through the crowd with a submachine gun, and exclusive weapons are just icing on the cake. In Louis' words, it's useless. Don't worry, Tony, our goal is to cut costs, which is also the idea of the army. Louis saw Tony's worry and comforted him. The hands turned the image at an angle. Tony, I think the carapace needs to be thickened, Louis said. It will affect movement. Tony disapproved of thickening the carapace. I'm planning to increase the reserve energy in the armor space. Louis suddenly thought of another interesting design. Reserve energy. Tony shook his head, not knowing what Louis was planning. It was a stupid idea, at least in Tony's opinion. If it is energy, is it not good to put it in the original energy pool? Reserved energy is a spare tire in the final analysis, and it is rarely used. If you give up your own mobility in order to reserve energy, this is undoubtedly reckless. No, Tony, what I mean is, this power reserve is meant to die together. Louis added several power conduits to Pure's body in the image, connecting from the inside to the armored limbs. When the energy in the carapace was transmitted to the limbs, the state of the limbs obviously began to overload. This is even more terrifying than the initial 1.5 times outbreak state, reaching or even exceeding the double warning line. It is hard to imagine how terrifying such a war machine would be if it appeared on the battlefield. Normal state, load state, overload state. After the overload is over, the machine will be detonated directly, and the enemy will die together. It can be said that this is the most suitable armor for the army. Louis' brain circuit is simply born for war. Ever since Louis made G3, Tony felt that he couldn't see through Louis more and more. Beep. Dr. Ethan is here. Ethan's appearance was remembered in J.A.R.V.I.SS storage. So the moment Ethan arrived, he reminded Tony and Louis. Open the door and let Ethan in, Tony yelled. Is Ethan here? It's just right, let me familiarize him with G3 first, and then it will be easier to participate in pure research and development. Louis had long thought about how to arrange Ethan's work. For novices, just one word, demolition. Once you take it apart, you can understand everything. As soon as Ethan walked into the lab, Louis threw a whole set of G3s to Ethan. Remove it, install it again, figure it out and then participate in pure research and development. Then Ethan started his own hard disassembly work. Seeing that Louis was on the right track here, Tony also felt that he was going to start the research and development of MARK2. After watching Louis' G3 and Chun, Tony has a new understanding of the production of MARK2. As for MARK1, unfortunately, the blueprint has long been left in the cave. However, MARK1 is a thing of the past, MARK2 will be even stronger, Tony is very confident about it. MARK1, IDNMD. Seeing that Tony built the appearance structure of MARK2 on the virtual projection, Louis sneaked over. Tony, is this your MARK2? It doesn't look very good. Louis mocked. Humph, BB will know when the time comes, MARK2 is definitely stronger than G3. Tony ignored Louis' taunt, but was very interested in having MARK2 and G3 play against each other. Okay, don't cry then, I still remember the last time you cried bitterly at me was not long ago. That being said, Tony wanted to grab a wrench and beat Louis up. Ignoring Tony, Louis returned to his workspace after mocking. First use three-dimensional modeling to create the pure armor entity, and then do the finishing on the parts. Louis also has a sense of urgency in his heart. The parameters of MARK2 are much higher than those of G3. If you want to defeat MARK2, you have to build pure armor as soon as possible, and then upgrade G3 to G3X. But sometimes, I want Tony to experience what it means to be beaten by society. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 21. As expected of a PhD in the Department of Physics, Ethan dismantled the G3 a few times, and he roughly understood the structure of the G3. After all, the G3 is still a mass-produced armor, but Louis has improved the performance of the G3. Ethan, who can participate in the pure design, has accelerated the research and development progress of Louis here a lot. Because there is already a rough idea, and there are few difficulties encountered during research and development. On the energy circuit, Louis adopted a new design this time to reduce energy loss. Anyway, Tony has already made the arc reactor. If Louis needs it, he can directly ask Tony for the design, and he can do it himself. This new energy circuit should be given to the army as a gift of friendship. After half a month of building, Kamen Rider Pure Armor was finally born. The three of them watched this first set of pure armor. Although it hadn't been painted and colored, it looked even colder. Ethan looked at this suit of armor excitedly, which was developed and manufactured by himself. Ethan, try it on, let's go test it. There was no excitement on Louis' face. This is just a mass-produced armor, and it still needs to pass the data test. Ethan looked at Louis in surprise, he didn't expect that Louis would let himself be the pure armor tester. This. Ethan was so excited that he felt like crying. Did Louis trust me so much? As soon as Louis saw Ethan's expression, he knew that this guy must have made up something in his head, and he was just thinking too much. The main reason why I don't wear it is because pure armor doesn't fit Louis's aesthetics. At least that helmet is really eye-catching. But it's more convenient. This is in line with the characteristics of the armor required by the army. It is simple and convenient, and it is easier to put on and take off. Even Ethan can put on a full suit of armor in less than 1 minute and 50 seconds. June wearing the armor feels a bit heavy, but not as heavy as the G3. The pure armor is probably less than a third of the weight of the G3 armor. Trained soldiers can definitely wear it to fight, which guarantees combat ability when there is no energy. Turning on the energy source, Ethan felt the power under his control, like an arm, very smooth. Punch it, Louis yelled. A dynamometer was moved in front of Ethan. Ethan took a deep breath, facing the dynamometer, and punched out. Boom! The violent roar made both Louis and Tony subconsciously cover their ears. Diddy! The red light on the dynamometer flashed continuously, and a number jumped out, 0.9 tons. How did this happen? Ethan was a little disappointed. He originally expected to have more than 1.2 tons, but now it is only 0.9 tons. This gap is too big. Louis and Tony didn't show any disappointment, this statistic was within their imagination. You can't put a weak Ethan in armor to exert much strength. The value of 1.2 tons is calculated according to the standard of normal adults. Ethan is obviously not in this category. After a series of tests, Ethan crawled out of the armor dripping with sweat, and lay on the ground gasping for breath. Even though most of the power came from the energy supply, Ethan was still exhausted with every movement. The test of turning back 100 meters almost made Ethan faint. 100 meters 6.32. J.A.R.V.I.S broken number. Okay, great speed. Louis and Tony gave a high five. The test data are lower than expected. But the tester is Ethan, so the data will go up by 20 to 30%, which is almost the same as the expected data. Did it work? Ethan asked panting, lying on the ground. It worked, Ethan, you did a great job. Louis stepped forward, and pulled Ethan up with his hand. Seeing the numbers recorded on the display, Ethan wept with joy. The next step is to discuss cooperation with Roddy. Ethan, I will leave this kind of matter to you. From now on, you will be the deputy director of the Armor R&D department, and you will also contact Roddy. In this R&D department with only 2 people in total, Louis handed everything over to Ethan. But Ethan wanted to refuse. No, but, come on, I'm optimistic about you. Louis cheered and encouraged Ethan. Ethan looked at Tony for help, and then, Tony silently gave Ethan a cheering look. Leaving Ethan alone wanting to cry without tears. Tony is developing Mark2, and Louis is working hard to upgrade from G3 to G3X. Neither of them wanted to lose to each other in the subsequent competition. Among the mansions on Mel Street, Obadiah received a package containing half a blueprint. Although the damage is serious, you can barely see the design facade inside, adhering to Tony's consistent design style. Yes, Tony's handwriting is correct. Obadiah can imagine if such a guy is made. Tony was sure to escape, too. But now that the blueprints are in my hands, Tony, you're ready to die. Stark Industries can only be mine, and everything you own is mine too. Both you and Louis must die. Obadiah laughed wantonly, and connected the 10 Commandments gang's video call. Our cooperation can continue, I will deliver the ammunition you want, and send the drawings I want in the same way. Happy cooperation. Happy cooperation. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 22. Clang clang clang. The sound of mechanical rotation became particularly obvious in the laboratory. Tony has been busy with the development of the Mark I for a while. After seeing Louis come up with pure armor a few days ago, Tony seemed to be holding back his stomach fire. In addition to eating and sleeping, basically in the laboratory. Going crazy. One can imagine how much stimulation Louis brought to Tony. But it's all positive stimulation. The end result is the early release of Mark II. Pure silver metallic surgical, unpainted. But it seems that it already has some momentum of the future classic Mark3. Tony wears a synchronization device on his head, which is used to coordinate and synchronize with the armor. The whole body of the Mark II is made of metal, even if it is made of light metal, the weight is amazing. It was a bit difficult for Louis to wear it and walk, let alone Tony, a technical nerd. J.A.R.V.I.S, activate the armor, activate the synchronization. Good job, sir. The armor is being activated, and the synchronization begins. With the blue light from the device on Tony's head, this proves that the synchronization is complete. Tony moved his wrist tentatively. Armor is also acting accordingly. Punch. Bounce. Run. A test is carried out constantly. Louis is also observing the Mark II test. Although it has not yet been installed, the performance of the armor alone has shown infinite potential. Kamen Rider armor and Mark series armor are actually a bit like two extremes. Louis uses his own strength to control the Kamen Rider armor, so he doesn't need a coherent device. Moreover, Louis's fighting style is more inclined to close combat, punching to the flesh. The Mark series tends to firepower, high mobility, and technology first. Therefore, compared with the simple and crude test content of the Kamen Rider series, the test of the Mark series will be more complicated. After all, more control and deployment instructions are still required through the exclusive system of the Mark series. With the end of the last project test, Tony turned off the coherence device on his head, and Mark II also entered a dormant state. J.A.R.V.I.S, what's the coherence rate? Tony asked impatiently. 98.32%, the coherence rate is low when bouncing, running, and flying, and the error will be even greater in extreme environments. Tony frowned, this statistic was actually within his expectations. But still a little dissatisfied. Because the Kamen Rider developed by Louis has no coherence rate at all, Everything is controlled by Lewis. In other words, the coherence rate is always 100%. Combat power is also set according to Lewis himself. If Mark2 is only like this, then there is no advantage at all except being able to fly when facing G3. But just for flight, when faced with G3's fire coverage, Mark II's defense is a little worrying. After all, in order to be able to fly, the Mark II armor is made of light metal, which is prone to flaws under the coverage of firepower. Tony sighed, still a little too impatient. Do you want to fight? Only the actual combat will reveal bigger problems. Lewis had a smirk. He wants to take advantage of the time when the Mark II is still in the research and development stage, and torture it once. Otherwise, after the finished product, it would be difficult for Lewis to torture a flying Mark II. Tony's eyes lit up. What Lewis said is not wrong, all the statistics are not as real as a fight. However, the laboratory can't bear such damage in the battle between the two of us. Lewis didn't want to mess up the house. It's okay, Roddy and the others have a small base for testing weapons, let's go there. Tony said immediately. The military's test base is not in vain. J.A.R.V.I.S, contact Roddy for me, Tony yelled. Not long after, Roddy's voice sounded. Tony, it's rare for you to call me. Roddy, I need to borrow your military's test base. Is it a test base? No problem, you closed the weapon research and development department. Few people have passed there now. When will you come? Lewis and I are going over now. Hey, wait, is Louis coming too? Yes, we'll be there soon. After speaking, Tony hung up the phone. Roddy doesn't seem to welcome me. Louis smirked. Is the psychological shadow I caused on Roddy a bit too big? If you restrain your personality a little, he will like you. Tony complained. Forget it. Lewis didn't have the slightest interest in liking a big man. Not long after, Tony drove that aggressive red Audi R8 to the agreed place. Roddy had been waiting here for a while, and when he saw Lewis appearing, Roddy subconsciously turned his face away. I really don't want to see Lewis. Before Tony could say hello, Lewis had already approached Roddy. Roddy, Ethan took the pure armor for testing, can you explain why the man hasn't been put back yet? Lewis' tone had a hint of malice. Sorry, Mr. Lewis, the test results are all satisfactory. The military's senior management is discussing the purchase of pure armor, but before that, in order to prevent the news from being leaked, we decided to let Mr. Ethan live in the Pentagon for a while. Please rest assured, the treatment we give is definitely the most luxurious. Roddy immediately explained, for fear of being misunderstood by Lewis. He had already seen the big box that Lewis was holding, with the letters G3 written on it. Lewis actually brought that set of armor that looked like a demon descended into the world. If Lewis killed wantonly like that day. Tick. The sweat on Roddy's forehead dripped to the ground. Qingming Reading Ceremony. Chapter 23. Tony and Louis each moved a large box to Roddy's military off-road vehicle. A group of people started to go to the dedicated field test base. What's in those two boxes? Roddy was curious. He saw G3, but another mask-like logo that Roddy hadn't seen yet. One is G3, and the other is Mark2. We need a bigger place for actual combat testing. G3, Mark II. Roddy was stunned. G3, he still knows what it is. But what is Mark II? You'll know when the time comes, drive your car, talk a lot. Lewis said impatiently, showing his bad temper again. At this moment, he is wearing a pair of special glasses, and the program of J.A.R.V.I.S is attached to the glasses. All kinds of data of G3 are in the eye, and the model analysis is being carried out. The relevant content of G3X, Louis has already entered into the archive. What I hate the most is when someone bothers me. Although the G3X is an upgrade version of the G3 in name, the enhancements are not just a little bit. Therefore, the idea of directly modifying the G3 was shattered. The actual data of G3X, the fist strength is 2.5 tons, the leg strength is 7.5 tons, the data is almost doubled. It's all about recreating an armor. Louis was no less stressed than Tony. As the prophet who guides the development of the plot, Lewis knows very well that the Earth will not be peaceful in the next few months. Even with G3X, it was hard for Lewis to feel safe. The off-road vehicle drove into the barren wilderness. There is a huge amount of military base here. But few people are seen in action. Ever since it was known that Stark Industries' Weapon Research and Development Department was shut down, many people have been evacuated here one after another. But today is a bit lively. Because, there are many cars of military bosses parked in the base. What day is it today? It's so lively here. Tony asked jokingly. These cars are all from well-known figures in the military. Even when Stark Industries is testing weapons, it is rare to have such a grand event. I don't know, wait in the car, I'll go down and ask. Roddy got out of the car, ready to ask the soldiers guarding the gate what's going on here. Hello Colonel. Roddy is a regular visitor here, and the two soldiers saluted immediately when they saw Roddy. Soldier, what's going on in here? Roddy asked. Report to the Colonel, the armor test is going on inside. The soldier replied loudly. When Louis heard this word, his eyes rolled a few times, not knowing what he was thinking. Armor test? Looks like it's really on the same day. Louis' voice came slowly, startling Roddy. Mr. Louis, are you down? Come on, let's go in and have a look. Louis didn't answer Roddy's question, he was very interested in the military test now. He didn't yet know what kind of tests the military was going to do with pure armor. With Roddy's colonel's bodyguard, Louis got inside easily. The sound of bullets was heard not far away. Da-da-da-da. The continuous and dense bullets hit the pure armor, making a tinkling sound. This is definitely naked armor that no one wears. But Louis was also shocked by the military's violent means, it was really simple and rude. 18 submachine guns aimed at the armor and knocked out a box of bullets. Even the armor has a lot of dents. The dummies used for testing also have stress depressions ranging from large to small. Although there was nothing wrong with the armor, the impact of the bullet still affected the dummy. The test results have come out. The defense of this suit of armor is perfect. Under such a density of shooting, the people inside may be seriously injured, but they will definitely not die. Military researchers quickly made a judgment. Tony and Roddy came to Louis' side. How? Tony asked. Although he was not interested in cooperating with the military, after all, this was Louis' first contract, and Tony hoped that everything would go well. The armor I made is definitely fine. Louis was confident. Roddy, arrange a testing ground for us. Louis doesn't want to waste time here. Louis knows exactly how much ability pure armor has. As a standard armor, the basic data is a little better than the normal version of G3. But in the battle, Louis still prefers that G3 will win, after all, G3 has too many weapons and equipment. Roddy quickly arranged the venue and Louis and Tony were ready to start testing. But I didn't expect a group of people to walk over, surrounded by a middle-aged man. I'm Lieutenant General Jason Wilson, you are the pure armor maker Louis Stark, you are really young, and your ability is comparable to that of your big brother. Lieutenant General Jason looked at Louis with satisfaction. Stark Industries really has a lot of talents, first there is Tony, and now there is another Louis. Such giants are the ones the military is ready to cooperate with. Mr. Lieutenant General isn't here to say these things, is he? Louis narrowed his eyes. This Lieutenant General appears here, so he won't come here to get clothes. Definitely not, it seems that you are also here to test the armor, do you want to add a pure armor test? Jason Wilson also wanted to see what kind of good guys Tony and Louis still have in their hands. Louis smiled. It turns out that this guy set his sights on Mark2 and G3. I want to test it out and find out. Looking for abuse? Louis likes these people who can't help but look for abuse when they come up. Definitely welcome, let's go together. Louis showed a good-natured smile, like the warm sunshine, extremely bright. Roddy shuddered. Appeared. The devil appeared again. Chapter 24. Compared with G3 and pure manual wearing, Mark2 adopts automatic wearing. Some areas also need to be bolted. Jason Wilson shook his head in disappointment. This is not suitable for individual combat. Too much trouble. On the contrary, it was Louis' G3 that caught his eye. Whether it is metal texture or shape structure, G3 looks very aggressive. Louis put on the G3 and jumped a few times. Boom! Boom! The ground was trembling slightly, making noises. All soldiers who tested pure armor were dumbfounded. The weight of pure armor is more than 50 kilograms, and the G3 seems to be a little heavier, at least 2 to 3 times. But Louis was so relaxed without turning on the energy source. Roddy swallowed, and said in a deep voice, "This devil has become stronger again." The tester for the pure armor was a big black guy in the unit and looked pretty strong. Louis was a little thankful that he had absorbed Tony's advice and added a size adjuster, otherwise it would be really difficult for this guy to wear it. J.A.R.V.I.S. Activate synchronism. Synchronization completed. The arc reactor on the chest began to continuously provide energy for Mark II. Mark II let out a low roar. Tony experienced the actual installation for a while, and there was not much blockage, and it was almost consistent. With an error of a few percent, only a machine can give such an accurate number. Tony looked at Louis, and asked in a deep voice, "Are you sure you want to fight too? Come here, don't cry when you lose." Louis smiled, his face under G3 was a little serious. The energy source of G3 starts to connect, and the energy tube starts to transmit energy. The originally calm G3 was like a volcano, and this moment seemed to contain great terror. "That's the power," Roddy murmured, feeling scared from the bottom of his heart. Pure armor also unlocks energy supplies. The sound effect as delicate as an electrician motor comes from Louis' bad taste. This comes from the boost engine that Louis puts on the pure armored legs. It can make the speed of pure soar to the extreme in the shortest time, and it can also make the speed of pure reach the previous test of 6.32 in 100 meters. Tony didn't speak, the mask of Mark II fell, and the coherence was instantly connected to the mask, and the data analysis was started. For a moment, G3 and pure data all appeared in front of Tony. The two attacked G3 with a tacit understanding. Whether it is Louis' request or G3's record, these are opponents that must be resolved in advance. The battle is imminent. It came just in time. Louis shouted loudly, and went up to him with bare hands. Fist for fist. Mark2 and G3 collided in strength. Boom. 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 Punch after punch. From the test of strength, simple and rough to the extreme, this is Louis' favorite way of fighting. Onlookers can even hear the sound of metal friction and collision, and even the sound of twisting shape-shifting. The right hand is 32.63% damaged, and the left hand is 16.19% damaged. J.A.R.V.I.S. quickly calculated the damage of Mark II. The two sides collided dozens of punches. On the surface, it looks evenly matched, but the body of the Mark II has undergone shape-shifting and has been damaged. When G3 and Mark2 collided, Chun also quickly identified the opportunity and rushed towards G3. This is a good chance. The pure tester didn't think about how to kill G3 with one hit. He is very clear about his advantage, which is to use his speed to slowly consume G3. With the Mark2 front pull, the pure living space will be much better. Humph! Louis sneered. I have been on guard against you for a long time. As the pure armor developed by Louis knows all about its characteristics and values, so how could he be unprepared? Speed can be said to be the biggest advantage of pure armor. But this kind of guerrilla warfare is really embarrassing. The Kamen Rider series has always been punching to the flesh, and the OB style of this tester is really a bit embarrassing. Do you think I set such a high leg strength for pure just to let you run? Louis was dissatisfied, and energy poured into his right fist in a short time. Get out of the way! Louis shouted. The power of the right hand increased instantly. Even Tony was caught off guard, and Mark II was sent flying upside down. Bang! The sound of parts falling made everyone's expressions change. The Mark2 armor actually fell into a disadvantage in the collision with G3, and even the body was destroyed. Tony's face was a little ugly. Did he lose? But he didn't have time to think. G3 turned around beautifully, and met Chun, who was about to attack. Sneak attack? Hee hee. Louis mocked with a smile. Energy was poured into the left arm again, and another punch was blasted out. The pure tester could only watch the iron fist appear, and flew into the air in the next second. How can it be so fast? No one could see clearly the speed of Louis punching. It felt like G3's movements became faster at that moment. Boom! The pure armor fell heavily to the ground. It turned out to be instantly killed. Complete abuse, no room to fight back. A large group of people immediately swarmed up and dragged the tester out. There was still a little panic on the big black man's face. After being instantly killed by G3, he still hasn't recovered a bit. After all, Mark2 collided with G3 for so long, and he was killed in seconds? Simply unimaginable. The blue and silver battle armor stood still, like a god of war. After a while, slowly raised his left arm, made a gesture of victory, and then retracted his index finger. A middle finger, a pillar of support. You scumbags! Chapter 25. Is this the end? Several major general-level figures looked at G3, who was showing off his might, with a hint of excitement in their eyes. G3 looks much stronger than Pure. Jason Wilson also took a meaningful look at G3, and shook his head when he saw Pure again. With G3 jewels in front, Pure naturally loses its appeal. Lewis touched G3's armor and stepped out. Immediately surrounded by a group of military bosses. Mr. Lewis, I wonder if this G3 armor can work. Jason Wilson asked immediately. The shock that G3 brought to them was too powerful. That kind of power can kill Pure in one move. Lewis shook his head, and said in a frivolous tone, don't think about it. It's natural that the G3 is powerful, but the cost is beyond your reach, so Pure armor is the most suitable standard armor for the army. If it is G3, your military expenditure may not be enough. The meaning clearly expressed in Lewis' words is 1. You poor bastards. Just buying a Pure armor from this group of bigwigs would take so many days to discuss. Lewis knew that this group of people were poor. Then there is nothing to say. Jason Wilson and the others couldn't understand what Lewis said, but what Lewis said was the truth. The military's operations in some conflicting countries, even with advanced weapons, still have not achieved very good results. Cuts in military spending have also made life difficult for them. Lewis no longer paid any attention to these poor gangsters. Walking to Tony's side, Mark II's armor has been removed. The damaged place is not serious, and it can be repaired by replacing some parts. Tony was a little disappointed. Mark II failed in the first battle, which made Tony a little reconciled. When he saw Louis, Tony just couldn't beat it. Yo, brother Tony, you won't cry for me because of a failure, will you? Louis swayed in front of Tony very embarrassingly. In the contest between the two sides, no matter who loses, the other side will go up and ridicule it. But obviously, most of Louis's ridicule. Tony wanted to say something, but seeing Louis frantically blinking and winking at himself, Tony finally let out a helpless sigh. Well, I won't expose you in full view. Tony put away the Mark II. Today's actual combat test has been completed, and there is no point in staying here. Mr. Wilson, we're leaving first. Tony greeted. In the end, the people in the military had no choice but to choose Pure. What else can I do? You can only blame yourself for not having money. Lieutenant General Jason Wilson nodded, seeing Louis' leisurely expression, he could only smile wryly. One day, I must equip the army with G3. This became Jason Wilson's obsession. Let this embarrassing Louis dare to mock himself for being poor. On the buggy. Tony scowled, glaring at Louis. Roddy, who was driving, didn't dare to speak. The atmosphere in the car was very strange until now. Hans, are you okay? Tony asked coldly. Louis winced subconsciously, but Tony grabbed it anyway. The hands, which were so delicate and slender that women would envy them, are now disastrously red and swollen. Ha 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 ha, it's okay. Fortunately, I used the freezing spray in time, otherwise the scene would be discovered. Louis said haha, trying to fool him. G3's damage is also serious. Tony pressed. Tony didn't bother to talk to Louis, the guy who asked for trouble, should let him lie at home for a few more days with some injuries. Both arms are crippled, but they can't be seen from the outside. Louis nodded. The previous overload mode of Pure armor was applied to G3 by Louis. However, no tests have been conducted. If it is not for those who want to use crushing to attract the military, Louis does not intend to apply it. The result now is that G3's two arms are completely scrapped. Carrying so much power all at once, it's strange not to waste it. Actually, there is no need to do this. When I first took over Stark Industries, I could only cooperate with the military because I was isolated and helpless, but now I don't need it. Tony explained. He could tell something was wrong when he was on the scene. G3's data had always been under the control of J.A.R.V.I.S, but the values suddenly skyrocketed to nearly double. One punch knocked Mark II back, and then another punch killed Pure. No matter how you look at it, it is impossible. As expected, Louis was playing tricks, and he wanted to show his strength even if G3 was damaged. I want to use G3 as a bargaining chip to allow the military to continue to cooperate with Stark Industries. It doesn't matter. Maintaining cooperation with the military is also good for us. At least next time I go racing at high speed, I can continue to ask the military to solve it. Roddy, who was driving, was feeling cold at the moment. I am still a member of the military, is it really okay for you to talk about this in front of me so blatantly? Oh, suddenly I remembered, is there a military person in our car? Colonel Roddy, you won't give away what we said, will you? Louis's tone fell lightly in Roddy's ears, creepy. I didn't hear anything, I didn't know anything. Roddy closed his eyes and said loudly. Sorry, it's not that I don't want to say it. Louis is really terrible, this man, he even threatened me. Under duress, Roddy consciously admitted his identity as an accomplice. Qingming reading ceremony. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.